Story 1. My wife and her friends thought it would be funny to leave me stranded in another state. Let's see if he can make it back. They laughed and drove away. I never came back. Point 1. 5 years later, she found me. 107 missed calls. Update 1. I stood there in the blinding Colorado sun, squinting at the empty spot where our car had been just 10 minutes ago. My wife, Chloe, and her friends, Ella, Stephanie, and Lauren, had vanished. At first, I thought it was one of their stupid pranks. They were always doing stuff like this, pushing boundaries, testing how much I'd take before I snapped. 5 years of marriage, and I'd gotten used to their little games, the way they'd laugh at me, the way Chloe would join in instead of standing up for me. But this felt different. My phone was still plugged into the car charger, my wallet tucked in the glove box. All I had was the faded t-shirt and jeans I was wearing, and a growing pit in my stomach as the minutes ticked by. We'd been on this road trip to Stephanie's lake house for 3 days now, and I'd been miserable the whole time. Chloe had begged me to come, saying it'd be a chance to bond with her crew. I wasn't big on the idea. Her friends always treated me like an outsider, tossing out jabs and inside jokes I wasn't part of. But I went anyway because I loved her, or at least I thought I did. The gas station was in the middle of nowhere, just a dusty little stop off the highway with a flickering sign and a single pump. I'd gone inside to use the bathroom, figuring they'd wait. They always waited. Except this time, they didn't. An hour passed. I paced the cracked pavement, kicking pebbles, telling myself they'd come back any second. Tires crunching gravel, Chloe's voice calling out, "Gotcha!" But the road stayed quiet. 2 hours in, sweat was dripping down my neck and my throat was dry. I kept replaying the last few days in my head. The way Stephanie smirked when she accidentally spilled coffee on my lap. How Lauren whispered something to Chloe that made her giggle while glancing at me. How I just watched it all with that smug little grin. I should have seen it coming. They'd been building up to something, and I'd been too dumb to notice. A truck pulled up, its engine rumbling loud enough to shake me out of my thoughts. The driver, a big guy with a gray beard and a stained ball cap, leaned out the window. "You okay, buddy?" Been standing there a while. His voice was rough but kind, and it hit me like a punch. I wasn't okay. They weren't coming back. Chloe wasn't coming back. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, my ride left me. You think you could help?" He nodded like it wasn't the first time he'd seen someone stranded out here. "Hop in. Where you headed?" I didn't even know. Home. Back to Chloe. The life we built. But as I climbed into the cab, something shifted inside me. 5 years of her laughing at me, brushing me off, letting her friends treat me like garbage. It all came rushing up, hot and heavy. I stared out the window as the gas station shrank in the side mirror. The trucker didn't ask too many questions, just kept driving, humming some old country song. My hands clenched into fists on my lap. I could have borrowed his phone, called Chloe, demanded answers, but what would she say? "It was a joke, babe. Don't be so sensitive." I'd heard it all before. Every time I complained about her friends, she'd roll her eyes and tell me I didn't get their humor. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I never would. But standing there alone, abandoned like some stray dog, I realized something. They didn't get me either. And Chloe, she'd pick them over me again and again. The trucker dropped me off at a crossroad, pointing me toward Grand Junction, the nearest town. "Good luck, man," he said, tipping his cap. I nodded, my throat tight, and started walking. My shoes scuffed the dirt, the sun beating down on my head. No phone, no money, no plan, just me and the open road. Part of me wanted to turn back, to beg someone at the gas station to call her, to fix this. But another part, a louder part, kept pushing me forward. I was done being the punchline, done being the guy they laughed at. Chloe and her friends thought they'd won, thought they'd broken me. But as I trudged toward Grand Junction, a strange calm settled over me. They hadn't broken me. They'd set me free. I didn't know what was waiting for me in that town. I didn't know how I'd eat, where I'd sleep, or how I'd get by with nothing. But for the first time in years, I wasn't scared of what Chloe would think. I wasn't worried about her friend's next move. I was alone, yeah, but I wasn't helpless. The road stretched out ahead, endless and empty. And I kept walking. They'd left me behind, but maybe that was the best thing they could have done. Maybe this was my chance to figure out who I was without her. Without them. By the time the sun started dipping low, turning the sky orange, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going back. Not to Chloe. Not to that life. Whatever came next, it was mine to build. I stood at that dusty crossroad where the trucker dropped me off, the Colorado wind kicking up little swirls of dirt around my feet. Grand Junction was somewhere ahead, but I didn't have a map, a phone, or a dime to my name. Just the clothes on my back and a head full of spinning thoughts. Chloe and her friends had left me high and dry, and part of me still wanted to find a way to call her, to hear her voice, to demand she turn the car around. But then I remembered how she'd laughed when Stephanie accidentally knocked my beer over at the lake house. How she'd shrugged when I asked her to stick up for me. 5 years of that. 5 years of feeling like a guest in my own marriage. No, I wasn't calling her. Not this time. I started walking toward town, my sneakers crunching on the gravel. The sun was still high, baking the ground, and sweat soaked through my shirt. I didn't know how far Grand Junction was. Miles probably, but I didn't care. Every step felt like a choice, like I was leaving her behind one footprint at a time. My mind kept drifting back to the gas station, to the moment I stepped out of that grimy bathroom and saw nothing but empty pavement. They'd planned it, hadn't they? Chloe, Stephanie, Ella, Lauren, all giggling in the car as they peeled out, thinking it'd be hilarious to ditch me. I could almost hear Chloe saying, "He'll figure it out. He always does." Well, I was figuring it out now, just not the way she expected. A pickup truck rumbled by, and I stuck out my thumb, hoping for a lift. The driver, a guy with a scruffy beard and a faded flannel shirt, slowed down and leaned out the window. "Need a ride?" he asked, eyeing me like he wasn't sure if I was on the level. "Yeah, heading to Grand Junction," I said, keeping my voice steady. He nodded. "Hop in. I'm going that way." I climbed into the passenger seat, grateful for the break. The cab smelled like oil and cigarettes, but it beat walking. "What's your story?" he asked as we rolled down the highway. I hesitated, then shrugged. "Got left behind by some people I thought I could trust." He grunted like he'd heard that one before. "Happens more than you'd think out here." He dropped me off on the edge of Grand Junction near a cluster of low buildings and a blinking traffic light. "Take care, man," he said, and drove off. I stood there, taking it in. A small town with a mix of old brick storefronts and newer chain stores. People were going about their day like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong for me. No wallet, no ID, no way to prove who I was. I needed help, and fast. I spotted a sign for a homeless shelter a few blocks down. A plain building with a cross painted on the side. My stomach twisted at the thought of me in a shelter. But what choice did I have? Inside, it was dim and smelled like bleach and stale coffee. A guy behind the counter looked up. "Roy," his name tag said. He was older, maybe 50, with a shaved head and a no-nonsense stare. "You lost or just broke?" he asked, sizing me up. "Both," I admitted, rubbing the back of my neck. "Got ditched out on the highway. No money, no phone, nothing." Roy didn't blink. "Happens. You got a name?" "Yeah, Mike," I said, figuring it was easier to stick to the truth for now. He handed me a clipboard with a form. "Fill this out. We'll get you a bed for the night. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." At night, I lay on a cot in a room full of snoring strangers, staring at the ceiling. My mind wouldn't shut off. Chloe's face kept popping up. Her voice, her laugh. I wanted to hate her, but part of me still ached for her to show up, to say it was all a mistake. But Roy's words stuck with me. "Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest." He didn't mess around. The next morning, he sat me down with a cup of weak coffee and a plan. "You need ID to do anything, job, bank, whatever. Takes time, but we'll start the process. Meantime, you need cash." I nodded, feeling useless. "Anywhere hiring?" I asked. Roy smirked. "There's a diner down the street. Owner's a tough old broad named Jacqueline. Tell her I sent you." The diner was a squat little place called Jackie's, with red vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner. Jacqueline was behind the counter, a wiry woman in her 60s with tattoos snaking up her arms and a voice like gravel. "Roy says you need work," she said, not even looking up from wiping the counter. "Yeah, I do," I replied, shifting on my feet. "Anything you got?" She squinted at me like she was trying to see through me. "Dishwasher quit yesterday. Pays crap. Hours are long. You steal from me, you're dead. Start now." I blinked, caught off guard, but nodded. "Okay, I'm in." She tossed me an apron, and just like that, I was scrubbing plates in the back, hot water soaking my hands. It wasn't much, but it was something. Something mine. No Chloe, no friends laughing at me. Just me and a stack of greasy dishes. Roy checked in later that week to help me file for a replacement ID. "Takes time," he said, handing me a stack of forms. "But you'll get there." I nodded, grateful for his gruff kindness, and kept pushing forward. The shelter became my home, Jacqueline's diner my lifeline. I didn't call Chloe, didn't even try. Every night I fell asleep exhausted, but it was a good kind of tired. I was starting over from nothing, and it felt like maybe, just maybe, I could make it work. That night, while I was drying dishes with hands wrinkled from hot water and grease, I heard the diner's doorbell ring. I hadn't seen who it was, nor did I want to look. Jacqueline was strict about work. Eyes on the dishes, focus on the sink. But something in the voice froze me. "Could it be him?" said a female voice, laughing. It was her. Chloe. I turned slowly, as if my body needed time to believe what my mind was already screaming. She was there, standing with that arrogance on her face I knew so well. And she wasn't alone. Stephanie and Lauren were with her, as if they owned the place, as if the world still revolved around them. I stood there with a wet dish towel in my hand, not knowing whether to laugh, scream, or ask what the hell she was doing there after 5 years. She looked at me as if I were a stranger, as if she had come to see a circus animal that escaped from its cage and now washed dishes in some corner of the world. "Mike," she said with a fake sweet voice. "I knew it was you. Roy told me, said you were working here. I had to see it with my own eyes." Stephanie whispered something in her ear and let out a little laugh. I saw it. I saw the mockery, the amusement. They thought they still had that power over me. Chloe took a step forward, and I smelled the same expensive perfume she used when she went out to dinner with friends and left me alone at home. It made me sick. "You disappeared, Mike. I thought you were dead. We looked for you. I cried so much." "You cried." My voice came out firm, low but loaded. "You left me in another state in the middle of nowhere. You laughed. You drove away. And now you come here 5 years later with that, I was worried face." She hesitated. For the first time, Chloe hesitated. "Mike, it was a joke," she tried. "No," I interrupted. "It wasn't. You planned that. Took my wallet, took my phone, left a man in the middle of the desert like he was trash. That's not a joke, Chloe. That's cruelty." Jacqueline appeared behind the counter, drying her hands. She crossed her arms and looked at me. "Any problem here, Mike?" "Not yet, but it could become one." "Then solve it quickly. This counter won't clean itself." I turned back to Chloe. "Why did you come?" She bit her lower lip. I knew that gesture. It was her gesture when she needed something. "The lake house. I sold it. And, well, the name was still in your name. I couldn't complete the sale without you signing the paperwork." I laughed. I burst out laughing. I laughed like a madman, loud enough for everyone in the diner to hear. And everyone looked. She blushed. "So that's it? You leave me to die in Colorado, and after 5 years you come back to ask for my signature? Are you kidding me?" "Mike, please. It's not that simple." "No, it is simple. You only care about yourself. It was always like that. Me washing dishes here doesn't bother you. But you not being able to finalize a sale? Then you show up. Are you broke, Chloe?" She didn't answer. "Tell me, who left whom? Who won in the end?" She remained silent. "You laughed at me, humiliated me, threw me away, and now you come here crawling because you need me." I approached, standing face to face with her. I'll sign, Chloe, but with one condition. You're going to come back here tomorrow, alone. You're going to enter through the back door, put on an apron, and wash dishes next to me. A full shift without complaining, without playing the queen. If you do that, I'll sign. She widened her eyes. You want to humiliate me? Me? No. I just want you to understand, at least for one night, the taste of being disposable. Stephanie took a step forward, but I stared her down. One peep from you, and you also get an apron. Jacqueline laughed at the counter. I'm loving this, Mike. I'm starting to think I underestimated you. Chloe didn't respond. She looked at her friends. For the first time, there was no laughter. I went back to the sink. My hands were shaking. My head was throbbing. But inside me, something settled. They had left me behind, and now they were seeing that I had moved on. And no, I wasn't going to make it easy, nor forget, nor forgive. Not yet. The game was just beginning. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The shelter was still silent. The other men sleeping, snoring softly, each dealing with their own ghosts. I sat on the edge of the cot, feeling the firmness of the floor under my feet. For the first time in a long time, I had control of the situation, and I wasn't going to waste it. I arrived at Jackie's before Jacqueline even opened the back door. She was surprised to see me there so early, but said nothing, just nodded and threw me a dish towel. Today's going to be interesting, she commented with that little smile at the corner of her mouth, and I knew exactly what she meant. At 9 o'clock sharp, I heard the back doorbell chime. It was Chloe. For the first time, she was alone. Without Stephanie, without Lauren, without the sarcastic little smile on her face. She wore clothes that clearly didn't match the environment. A brand-name white blouse and tight pants that wouldn't last 2 hours in the kitchen. She brought the apron that Jacqueline had left aside for her. Folded, impeccable. You came? I said, leaning against the sink, arms crossed. She hesitated before answering. I need your signature, Mike. And if this is your price, I'm here. It's not my price, I retorted. It's your lesson. She put on the apron without saying anything. I took her to the sink. I explained how to separate the plates, where to put the glasses, how to change the hot water. The first 10 minutes were silent. Chloe didn't complain, but every time she dipped her hands in that greasy water, you could see the disgust stamped on her face. An hour later, the makeup had disappeared, hair hastily tied up, red hands. Jacqueline passed by us a few times, looking with that gleam of amusement in her eyes. You're doing well, princess, she let out. Chloe didn't respond. Another hour passed. The dining room filled up. The kitchen began to get unbearably hot. Shouts of food orders, dishes clashing, grease sizzling. Chloe tried to keep up, but was slow. Every plate that slipped or broke made her shrink, and I watched, not with pleasure, but with justice. She started to tremble when Jacqueline yelled from the counter window, "Hurry up with those utensils, Chloe. Lunch has already turned into dinner." I saw it. I saw the moment when the bubble she lived in began to burst. I saw when she realized she wasn't in command. I saw when pride began to crack. "Why are you doing this to me?" she asked in a whisper while scrubbing a tray with teary eyes. "Do you really want me to tell you?" I replied without stopping washing. She dropped the sponge, turned to me, and for the first time in 5 years, Chloe cried for real. Without acting, without drama. Just her in the middle of a stuffy kitchen covered in soap and shame. I thought you would come back. I thought you would call. That you would apologize." Her voice failed. "Apologize?" I laughed, bitter. "You left me with nothing in the middle of Colorado, Chloe. You and your friends laughed while you watched me disappear in the rearview mirror. That's not a joke. That's perversity." She fell silent. "I was your husband. I loved you. I put up with your friends, your jokes, your coldness. And when you had the chance to show me I was important, you chose to laugh." "I was an idiot," she whispered. "Were?" I asked. "I don't know if you've changed, but this day is just the beginning of what you deserve to feel. Because I lived 5 years thinking I was trash. And now looking at you like this, I realized the trash was never me. The shift ended at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Chloe took off the apron as if it weighed tons. Jacqueline gave her a pat on the back. "You're still alive, rich girl. It wasn't that hard. Come on." Chloe followed me to the back where I kept my belongings in an old locker. She handed me the house paperwork. "Here it is. You need to sign here, here, and here." I took the pen. I looked at her. "Just one more thing." She raised her eyes. "You're going to go home today and tell your friends what you did. You're going to tell them that you begged me for help, that you washed dishes, that you had to swallow your own pride. And you're going to say that I forgave you because that's what they'll hate most. Knowing that you humiliated yourself and still came out defeated." Chloe paled. "Why?" "Because forgiveness, Chloe, is the final humiliation. And because the best revenge is being happy without you." I signed the papers. I handed them back. And without another word, I went back into the diner. Jacqueline looked at me with a crooked smile. "Did you wash your soul today?" "Not yet, but I started scrubbing." And so the game turned, and for the first time she was the one who needed me. That night after work, I walked to the shelter with hands still wet from soap and a mind seething. The words I exchanged with Chloe echoed in my ears like bitter music. I had won in a way, but it wasn't a scoring game. It wasn't about numbers. It was about what I felt. And what I felt was anger. Roy was at the reception, as always, writing something in an old notebook. When he saw me enter, he raised his eyes. "Busy day." I nodded, throwing my grimy backpack on the floor. She showed up. He wasn't surprised. Just gave that corner smile he always gave when something made too much sense for his taste. And I didn't send her away. I made her wash dishes with me. A full shift. Roy let out a whistle, admired. "You're different, Mike." "I'm tired of swallowing toads." I sat right there on the corridor floor, leaning against the wall, and stared at the ceiling for a moment. Roy sat next to me in silence, as if he knew I needed space but not solitude. What did she want? For me to sign the papers for the lake house. It was in my name. She couldn't sell it without me. "And you signed after she got on her knees?" "Yes, literally. I wanted to see her world crumble, even if it was just for a few hours." Roy gave a light pat on my shoulder. "The world doesn't return everything in the same coin, Mike. Sometimes it pays in installments. Stay alert." I kept that in my head for days. While I washed dishes, swept the floor, changed the soda tanks, Chloe disappeared again, but not from my mind. And that's when the unexpected happened. On a gray and muggy afternoon, Stephanie appeared at the diner alone with very high heels and a bitter expression. "We need to talk," she said, taking off her sunglasses. Now, Jacqueline didn't like trouble, but seemed to understand that this was personal. "Go to the back, Mike. If it's a fight, avoid getting blood on my kitchen." I leaned against the wall next to the freezer. Stephanie took off her coat, visibly nervous. That usual confidence, the same one she used to mock me for years, seemed absent. "You humiliated Chloe," she began without beating around the bush. "She humiliated herself." I just held the mirror. Stephanie glared at me angrily. "She's been different since that day. She's locked herself up. She's crying. She says you destroyed her." "Oh, poor thing. 5 years destroying others, and one afternoon was too much for her." "Mike," she approached. "Look, I don't like you. I never liked you, but you need to know that Chloe." She was diagnosed with depression. Seriously, she's taking medication. She's saying her life lost meaning after what you did. I gave a bitter smile. "Funny. My life also lost meaning, Stephanie, when she left me to die on a forgotten road. But nobody showed up saying I had depression. Nobody cared." She shook her head, exhausted. "I didn't come here to defend her. I came here because she's thinking about going to the police, saying you forced her to work against her will, that you coerced her to sign the papers. She's having a breakdown." That made me laugh. Burst out laughing. "She wants to sue me for making her wash dishes? My God, what a joke. It'll be hilarious to see her explain that to the judge." "Mike, listen. This could get out of control. Chloe is going too far. She doesn't know how to lose." "I know. And now, for the first time, she lost. Stephanie hesitated. Look, I also thought it was funny what we did to you. The jokes, the games. But when I saw you there at the diner, sweaty, firm, in control of yourself, I realized you became someone none of us could bring down again. Did you come to warn me or apologize? She swallowed hard. That was difficult to hear coming from her mouth. Both. Silence fell between us, and I saw in her eyes something I had never seen before. Regret. Tell Chloe that if she tries anything, I have proof. Witnesses, Jacqueline, Roy, and an entire city that saw me rebuild my life. She won't listen to you. Then she'll fall alone. Stephanie nodded. She picked up her coat, prepared to leave. Mike! What? You deserve to be happy, man. Finally, someone noticed. She left, and I stood there still feeling the weight of years of contempt finally being reversed. Maybe the world was really paying in installments, and the next one was on its way. The news that Chloe threatened to go to the police didn't shake me as she probably expected. Actually, it gave me even more clarity about the type of person I had been married to for 5 long years. The type who causes trouble, disappears, reappears asking for help, and when she doesn't get what she wants the way she wants it, plays dirty. The next morning, I arrived at the shelter and Roy was already waiting for me with a serious expression. He was holding an envelope in his hands. They delivered this to you here. A blonde woman in a black car said it was urgent. I took the envelope. Inside there was an informal summons, an invitation to talk to a lawyer under allegation of psychological coercion and emotional blackmail involving patrimonial assets. It was too absurd to seem real. This is a joke, I muttered, shaking my head. It seems Miss Chloe isn't ready to let the past die, Roy commented without lifting his eyes from his notebook. It's not the past she doesn't want to bury. It's control. Jacqueline also knew about the summons. When I arrived for my shift, she was already at the counter stirring a cup of coffee with more force than necessary. She wants to screw you because you showed you can live without her, she said. And more than that, you showed you're stronger than she imagined. That type of people doesn't forgive when they lose power. What if she goes through with this? Jacqueline gave me an icy look. I'm the owner of the diner. I have cameras. I have employees. Everyone saw you never raised your voice. She came of her own free will. She washed dishes because she wanted the damn signature. She doesn't have a case. And if she does, she'll be humiliated in public. I didn't want war, I sighed. But you're going to win one, she replied firmly. Even so, the following weeks were psychological hell. Chloe started appearing more often in town, always from a distance, staring at me from the sidewalk, following me through the streets, driving slowly past the shelter like a sticky shadow from the past. Sometimes alone, other times with Lauren, who seemed more uncomfortable than complicit now. I stayed firm. I worked, saved money, avoided contact, but inside the anger grew. I wanted to forget, move on. But she wouldn't let me. Chloe wanted to destroy the little I had built with my own hands. Until one day I received an unexpected call. It was from the old registry office where we registered the lake house. The employee informed me that Chloe was trying to contest the validity of the signature I had given, the one she herself brought to me. She's saying she was coerced. She's trying to annul the document. I closed my eyes. I breathed deeply. That was it. She had chosen the path of war. That's when something inside me changed. It was no longer just about revenge. Now it was self-defense. I went straight to Jacqueline and told her everything. She looked at me, lit a cigarette, even though it was prohibited inside the diner, and said, "It's time for you to turn the game around. Not just defend yourself, but deliver the final blow." How? She looked at me as if it were obvious. You know what screws people like Chloe? Being exposed. People who think they're better than others hate having their mask ripped off. Want to bring her down? Tell the whole story in public, from beginning to end. Nobody will believe it. But now they will. You have a name in the city. You have witnesses. You have everything. I'll speak myself if you want. And you know what else? I have the security camera footage from the day, She showed up here washing dishes on her knees, begging. It was like a punch to the stomach. A good punch. I spent that night awake. I wrote everything line by line, from the day I got in that car for the trip to the moment Chloe reappeared with a trembling voice. I wrote the raw truth without a filter. And with the help of one of the shelter volunteers who understood social media, I published it. I posted it on a local forum in a city group and let the facts speak for themselves. The repercussion was immediate. People who knew Chloe from the city where we lived started commenting. People who had already witnessed the contempt with which she treated me confirmed the stories. A former coworker of hers published that Chloe had already been removed for team bullying. Someone shared screenshots of old messages with jokes about leaving Mike in Colorado. She could no longer hide. In less than 48 hours, the story had already been shared hundreds of times. And Chloe disappeared. Nobody saw her in the city anymore. Lauren deleted all social media. Stephanie sent an anonymous message saying only, "She lost everything." That night, I sat outside the diner with Jacqueline. Roy came later with 2 cans of cheap soda. None of us talked much, but there was peace in the air. I didn't need to lift a finger. I just needed to tell the truth. And it did what Chloe feared most. It destroyed the image she had built her whole life. Maybe for the first time, she felt in her own skin what it was like to be abandoned, exposed, alone. And me? I was finally free. The following days were strangely quiet. A silence that didn't come from peace, but from the absence of noise. The kind of emptiness that remains when a storm sweeps everything away and what's left is just wet earth and debris. The diner returned to its normal routine. Customers came and went, ordered coffees, complained about scrambled eggs, left fat tips or crumpled coins. Jacqueline treated me the same way, as if nothing had happened. But sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, she smiled with pride. Roy called me famous every time I passed by the shelter reception. "Ready to give autographs?" he mocked, pointing to the pile of printouts of the post that was now posted on a community bulletin board. "You became a local legend, Mike." I gave a half smile, but inside, my heart still beat heavy because even winning, even being heard, even bringing down Chloe, a part of me still didn't know what to do with all that. It was like getting out of prison and not knowing where to run. One night, I received an unexpected visit. It was Lauren. She was different. No makeup, hair tied in a messy bun, wearing old sweatpants and flip-flops. Nothing like the woman who used to look down at me with contempt. "Can I come in?" she asked timidly at the back door of the diner. I nodded. Jacqueline frowned but said nothing. She was cleaning the counter, listening to everything from afar. "I didn't come to fight," Lauren said, keeping her hands in her pockets. "I came to apologize." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, without saying anything. She continued. "When I saw what was posted and saw the comments, I realized how cruel we were. We always thought it was just joking around, that you could take it, but what we did was monstrous. You had 5 years to realize that." She lowered her head. "I know, and I don't deserve forgiveness. But you need to know, Chloe." She had a breakdown for real. She tried to kill herself. I remained silent. That hit hard. Not with guilt, but like a sharp blow of reality. "She's hospitalized," Lauren continued. "Her mother called me. They said it was because of all this, the post, the shame, the exposure. She lost her job, her apartment, and herself." "I lost all that too," I replied. "And nobody showed up with flowers at my door. I'm not asking you to feel sorry. I just thought you should know. I knew that someday the masks would fall, and that she wouldn't know how to deal with her own weakness. But this, Lauren, this is a consequence of her choices, not mine." She nodded. "Will you visit her?" "No." She swallowed hard. "So that's it. That's freedom." Lauren sighed, turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "I don't know what you're planning now, Mike, but be great. You've already been small for too many people." She left, and I stood there in silence, facing the emptiness of the dark street outside. So many times I wished to see them broken, humiliated, defeated. Now that I had achieved it, I didn't feel glory nor ecstasy. I felt something much stranger, lightness, because finally, Chloe's shadow no longer weighed on my back. The next morning, I decided it was time to take the next step. I went to Roy and asked, "Do you still know that guy from the warehouse who needed a supervisor?" He widened his eyes. "I thought you didn't want anything more than dirty dishes. I want something bigger, a place of my own, a corner to grow." He gave me the number, shook my hand firmly, and said, "You stayed standing, Mike. Now learn to run." I left the shelter that same week. I found a simple little room in a modest building downtown. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time, I closed the door of a place that belonged to me without Chloe's name on the contract, without mocking voices on the other side of the wall. At the new job, I started as an assistant, but in 2 months I was promoted. Jacqueline showed up one day at the warehouse to give me a bag of pastries and a card that said, "Here lies the man who washed dishes. Long live the one who rebuilt his own empire." I read that about 10 times, and each time I smiled with more pride. One day, maybe I'll write a book about all this. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll just live in peace like any ordinary man. But if there's one thing I learned, it's that the real punishment isn't the scream nor the confrontation. It's silence, absence, indifference. Because there's no worse punishment for someone like Chloe than discovering she lost power over someone who one day she thought she possessed. And me? I never went back to get anything. Because those who leave in pieces sometimes come back whole, stronger, freer. Months passed. Spring arrived in Grand Junction, and with it, a new version of me. The man who washed dishes had been left behind. I still remembered him, of course. How could I not remember? But now he was just a milestone, a turning point. I worked at the warehouse Monday through Saturday as team manager. I was respected. I had friends. People who greeted me with sincerity and not with condescension. People who asked how I was and really wanted to know. And at night, when I locked the door of my modest apartment and sat down to dinner in silence, I felt something I had never felt during my entire marriage. Peace. But the world is a cyclical place. And sometimes when you think you've left the past behind, it finds a way to knock on your door. Not as a monster, but as a whisper. Something that tests you, that asks, "Did you really change?" It was on a gray Tuesday. Almost no movement at the warehouse. I was organizing papers when the receptionist called me. "Mike, there's someone wanting to talk to you. She's waiting outside." I went to the entrance and stopped cold. It was Chloe's mother. She was older, of course, with more marked wrinkles, grayish hair, and the same haughty look she always had. But there was something different. Tiredness, perhaps, or regret. I didn't approach. I stood there, still waiting for her to say why she came. "I heard about what happened," she said. "About the story, about what Chloe did to you." I nodded without saying anything. I didn't come to apologize for her. I know it wouldn't help. I just came to say that she left the clinic. The word clinic hit like an echo. I knew she had tried to kill herself, but I never sought to know more than that. It wasn't my burden, not anymore. "And what does that have to do with me?" I asked. She breathed deeply. "She's empty. She doesn't have anyone anymore. The friends disappeared. Her father doesn't talk to her. And even so, she talks about you all the time, as if she could still fix everything." "She can't," I replied firmly. "And if she wants to try, let her start by apologizing to the people who are no longer here to listen. To those who, like me, she destroyed and thought would never get up." Her mother nodded with teary eyes. "I just thought if you wanted to know." "I don't want to." She lowered her head. "She lost everything. And I gained myself." I took a step forward. "That's enough." She left. And for the first time, I didn't keep mulling over the conversation. I didn't sleep badly. I didn't repeat phrases mentally. I just continued my day because that visit wasn't a new beginning. It was a period. That night, I sat on the balcony of my small apartment with a cheap beer and my feet resting on the small wall. The sky was clear, the city silent, and I smiled. I remembered the Mike lost on the Colorado road, thirsty, afraid, waiting to hear the tires coming back. He didn't come back, and thank goodness, because the man who was waiting would never have been strong enough to get this far. I learned later that Chloe moved far away, that she tried to start over in another state, that she changed her last name, changed her look. Maybe she was trying to erase everything. But there are things you don't erase. There's karma you carry. The last time I heard about her, someone mentioned she was working as a receptionist at an aesthetics clinic. Nobody could say if she was well, and honestly I didn't want to know. She had her chance, many, and she chose to laugh while I sank. What she felt now was hers. And as for me, I rebuilt brick by brick, without hurry, without a stage, without needing approval. My name now meant something, and that is something Chloe can never erase. Never. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My parents said my brother and his family were moving into my house, and I had no say because he had already decided. I've always been the overlooked one in my family, never the favorite, never the golden child. Just Matthew, the accountant. My brother Ryan, on the other hand, has always been the one my parents adored. When we were kids, Ryan got brand new bikes while I ended up with his used ones. On birthdays, he'd receive high-end gaming consoles while I got books or clothes. During high school, my parents attended every single one of Ryan's football games, but they only showed up to one of my debate competitions. The final, which, for the record, I won. Even then, they spent half the time talking about how proud Ryan would have been. My grandfather's will was just another reminder of a lifetime of favoritism. Ryan inherited a spacious 4-bedroom house in an upscale neighborhood, while I got a modest 2-bedroom home on the edge of the suburbs. My mom had begged Grandpa to leave the bigger house to Ryan. I once overheard a conversation she thought I wasn't around for. "Dad, please," she appealed. "Ryan will have a family one day. He needs more space. Matthew will be fine in the smaller house." I never complained about any of it. What would have been the point? In our family, Ryan always came first. That was just how things worked. So, I wasn't shocked when, during one of our usual family gatherings, Ryan and his wife Olivia cleared their throats dramatically and announced that they had major news. "We decided to sell the house," Ryan declared, beaming. I almost choked on my water. "We're investing in an incredible opportunity," Olivia added, practically bouncing in her chair. "Ryan's friend Eric has this amazing business venture, and we're getting in at the ground level." My parents clapped their hands in excitement. "Oh, that's wonderful," Mom exclaimed. "What kind of business venture?" I asked cautiously. "It's a bit complicated," Ryan said, waving his hand dismissively. "Eric is launching a tech platform that connects investors with startups. It's going to revolutionize the venture capital industry. We're going to make a fortune," Olivia chimed in. "Eric projects a 300% return in just the first year." 300%? I repeated, setting my fork down. "That sounds suspicious. Look, you guys have 2 young kids. Sophie is only 5 and Noah just turned 3. Are you sure selling your house is the best move? Maybe you should invest a portion of your savings instead." The atmosphere in the room suddenly became tense. Olivia scoffed, and Ryan flashed me the same condescending smile I had seen my whole life. "Matthew," he said slowly, as if speaking to a child, "I know you mean well, but I studied finance at Westfield University. You're just an accountant who went to community college. I think I have a better grasp of entrepreneurship than you do." I bit my tongue. What Ryan never mentioned was that he had barely scraped by at Westfield, while I graduated with honors and had already been promoted twice in 5 years at my firm. "Besides," Ryan continued, "Grandpa gave me the bigger house for a reason. He always knew I had a mind for business. This is exactly the kind of opportunity he would have wanted me to seize." I could have told him right then and there that Grandpa had only given him the bigger house because Mom had begged for it. I could have pointed out that Grandpa, who built his modest wealth through careful savings and conservative investments, would have been horrified by the idea of Ryan selling his house to invest in some vague tech startup. I could have mentioned that Eric had already gone through 3 failed startups in the past 5 years. But why bother? Ryan was a grown man. He and Olivia had made their decision and, frankly, after a lifetime of playing second fiddle, I didn't feel particularly inclined to save him from himself. "You're right," I said instead, taking another sip of water. "It's your choice." Mom beamed at Ryan. "We're so proud of you for taking this risk," she said. "It takes courage to chase an opportunity like this." Dad nodded in agreement. "Your grandfather would be proud, too." For the rest of the dinner, Ryan and Olivia talked excitedly about all the things they planned to do once they became wealthy. They'd travel the world, buy a vacation home, and enroll their kids in a private school. I stayed quiet, nodding and smiling when necessary. Meanwhile, I mentally reviewed my own renovation plans for my small house. I had been upgrading it room by room, using the money I had saved from my boring accounting job. Last month, I finished the kitchen. Next up was the bathroom. 3 months after that fateful night, I was standing under my brand new rainfall shower, enjoying the hot water, when my phone started buzzing relentlessly. At first, I ignored it, but after the 5th consecutive call, I sighed, turned off the water, and grabbed a towel. 6 missed calls from Mom. That was never a good sign. I immediately called her back, still dripping water onto my bathroom floor. "Matthew, thank God." Mom answered, her voice tense. "Can you come over? It's about Ryan." An hour later, I pulled into my parents' driveway and immediately noticed something strange. A mountain of suitcases and boxes was stacked up on the front porch. Before I could even ring the doorbell, the door swung open and I was nearly knocked over by Sophie and Noah, who came barring toward me. "Uncle Matthew," Sophie cried. "We're staying with Grandma and Grandpa now." I looked up to see my mother standing in the doorway, her face weary and drained. Behind her, Ryan paced back and forth, phone pressed to his ear, while Olivia sat on the couch staring blankly at her laptop. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already had a pretty good idea. Mom motioned for me to come inside and shut the door behind us. "Ryan and Olivia had to leave their apartment," she whispered. "The rent was too much." So they had already burned through the house money. After selling their home, Ryan and Olivia had immediately splurged on a flashy red Porsche 911, completely impractical for a family with 2 small children. Then they rented a luxury apartment downtown, and Ryan quit his stable job at the bank to focus entirely on his investment. They had poured around $500,000 into Eric's business venture and spent the remaining $100,000 on the car and a lavish vacation to the Maldives, leaving the kids with my parents for 3 weeks. "Eric said the first quarter is always slow," Ryan said loudly, finishing his call. He forced a smile. "But things are about to take off any day now." I walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water, and my dad followed me in. "How bad is it?" I asked quietly. Dad sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "They've burned through everything." The apartment was $4,000 a month. The car payment was another $1,500. They couldn't keep up any investment. Dad's expression darkened. "Eric keeps saying they're on the verge of a breakthrough." He shook his head. "But I have a bad feeling about it." Over the next few weeks, I watched from a distance as Ryan scrambled to find a job. He eventually landed a position at a car dealership, a significant step down from his previous role in banking, but at least it was something. Meanwhile, Olivia tried to keep up appearances, posting carefully curated photos on social media to make everything look normal. But things were far from normal. My parents' modest retirement home wasn't meant to house 6 people. One evening, my mom called, sounding exhausted. "Matthew, sweetheart, I hate to ask, but..." She hesitated. "We're struggling a little with groceries. Extra mouths to feed." I knew what was coming. "How much do you need, Mom?" "Oh, anything would help," she said quickly. "We're just a little tight this month." I promised to send the money right away and settled on $600. Enough to help, but not enough to put a strain on my own budget. When I told her the amount, she thanked me profusely, though I could hear the slight disappointment in her voice. She had clearly hoped for more. The next month, I got another call, then another. The $600 turned into a monthly transfer. I didn't mind helping, but I couldn't help but notice that despite their financial troubles, Ryan and Olivia still managed to keep the Porsche. Priorities, I guess. One evening, I attended my cousin Beth's birthday party. I thought it would be a nice break from all the family drama, but I was wrong. My Aunt Patty pulled me aside near the dessert table. "Matthew, dear," she whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "How are you holding up with all this Ryan situation?" I shrugged. "Just trying to help where I can." Aunt Patty leaned in closer. "Well, you should know that your parents are at their breaking point. Of course they love Ryan, but having his entire family there is wearing them down." She took a sip of her wine and lowered her voice. "And between you and me, they have a plan to fix it." A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. "What kind of plan?" "They want Ryan and his family to move into your house." I nearly dropped my plate. "What?" "Your mom thinks it makes perfect sense since you live alone in a 2-bedroom house." I stood there frozen as Aunt Patty gave my arm a sympathetic squeeze. "I thought you should know. It didn't seem right for them to be planning this behind your back." The party continued around me, but I barely noticed. All I could think about was the sheer audacity of it. They weren't just planning to ask me to take in Ryan and his family. They were planning to push me out of my own home. As I drove home that night, my mind was racing. I knew exactly what was coming next. The guilt trips, the family pressure, the classic, "it's just temporary," which would somehow turn into permanent. And once Ryan's family moved in, I'd be expected to pay the bills, clean up after them, and eventually give up my own space entirely. Not this time. I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me again. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at my kitchen table thinking. By the time I finished the glass, I had a plan. The next morning, I walked straight into my boss Dave's office without an appointment. He looked up from his computer, surprised. "Matthew, everything okay?" I didn't bother with small talk. "Is that accounting position at the Pittsburgh branch still open?" Dave leaned back in his chair, studying me. "That's a senior position, Matthew. More responsibility, a new environment, a big move." "I'm ready for it," I said with confidence. "I've been here for 5 years. I've consistently exceeded my targets. My performance reviews are excellent. I have the qualifications." Dave nodded thoughtfully. "Well, I can't say I want to lose you here, but," he smiled, "you'd be a great fit for the position. Let me make a few calls." He paused. "The position starts in 4 weeks. Is that enough time for you to get everything in order?" "Perfect," I replied, already mentally calculating my next steps. As soon as I left Dave's office, I called my friend Jana, a real estate agent. "I need to sell my house as quickly as possible," I said, getting straight to the point. "Well, your place is in a great neighborhood and you've done some amazing renovations." She thought for a moment. "If we price it aggressively, we could have offers within a week." "But Matthew, are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I said firmly. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Jana worked her magic, and within 5 days, we had 3 competing offers. I accepted the highest one, $285,000, $285,000, $285,000, $45,000 more than I had paid for it 4 years ago. Not bad for a small house. Meanwhile, I started researching apartments in Pittsburgh, focusing on areas close to the company's branch. Real estate was more affordable there than in my current city, and I found a beautiful 1-bedroom apartment in a modern building with a gym and a rooftop terrace for $222,000. I made an offer immediately and started the buying process. Through it all, I told no one in my family what I was doing. My mom called twice, once to thank me for the monthly transfer, and another time trying to sound casual as she invited me over for dinner next Saturday. "We have some things we'd like to talk to you about," she said, trying to keep her tone light. "Sure, Mom," I replied, just as casually. "I'll be there." I arranged for a moving company to pack up and transport most of my belongings to a storage unit in Pittsburgh, scheduled for the day before the family dinner. I kept only what fit in 2 suitcases. Clothes for a couple of weeks, my laptop, and a few personal items. The day after the movers left, I checked into a modest hostel downtown. Sleeping in a twin bed in a shared room felt strange, but it was only temporary. Just 3 more days until my flight to Pittsburgh. On Saturday evening, I drove to my parents' house for the last time. I parked a block away to avoid drawing attention to my packed car. As I walked up the familiar path to the front door, I took a deep breath. This was it, the confrontation I had spent my whole life avoiding. My mom opened the door with a tight smile. "Matthew, good you're here. We were just about to serve dinner." Inside, the atmosphere was tense. My dad sat at the head of the table looking uncomfortable. Ryan and Olivia were there, too. Both tried to appear friendly but were coming off as smug. The kids were nowhere to be seen. We exchanged a few meaningless pleasantries before my mom finally set her fork down and got to the point. "Matthew, honey, we want to talk to you about your house." "What about it?" I asked innocently. "Well," Mom continued, slipping into that persuasive tone she had used my entire life whenever she wanted me to sacrifice something for Ryan. "Your father and I have been thinking. It would make sense for Ryan and his family to stay with you for a little while, just until they get back on their feet." I looked at Ryan, who kept his eyes fixed on his plate. Olivia was watching me, a hint of defiance in her gaze. "How long?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Ryan shrugged. "Not sure yet, but things are starting to look up with the investment. Eric says we're on the verge of a major breakthrough any day now." I had to suppress a laugh. 3 months later, and he was still clinging to that fantasy. "I don't think it's a good idea," I said, my voice tighter than I intended. "My house is pretty small. There are only 2 bedrooms. You could take the smaller bedroom and let them have the master," Mom suggested quickly. "Or maybe you could stay with a friend for a bit, just until things settle down." I opened my mouth to argue but stopped myself. What was the point? In a few days I'd be gone and none of this would matter anymore. Better to let them think they had one. I let out a heavy sigh, letting my shoulders slump in what I hoped looked like defeat. "Fine," I said flatly. "When are they planning to move in?" My mom looked surprised, clearly expecting more resistance. "We were thinking next weekend. Would that work?" "Sure," I said, pushing my food around on my plate disinterestedly. "I guess I'll start packing up some of my things." Ryan and Olivia exchanged triumphant glances. Mom looked relieved. Dad still wouldn't meet my eyes. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. Mom, Dad, Ryan, and Olivia started discussing logistics. What furniture would stay, what would go into storage, and how my home office could be turned into a playroom for the kids. I mostly just moved my food around on my plate, responding with one-word answers when directly addressed. After dessert, I stood up. I should get going. Lots to do if I'm moving out next weekend. As I walked to the door, I heard them continue their conversation, their voices lowering but still audible. "I told you he'd agree," Mom was saying. "Matthew's always been reasonable. Should we help him pack his things?" Dad asked. "No need," Olivia replied casually. "Most of it can just stay in the garage. It's not like he had anything valuable." "We'll need a new couch," Ryan added. "That old thing he has kills my back." I quietly closed the front door behind me, their voices fading as I walked away. They had already erased me from the picture, already planning how to take over my space and replace my things with theirs as if I had never been there at all. But what they didn't know was that there was nothing left for them to take. Back at the hostel, I checked my phone and saw a message from my mom. "Thank you for understanding, sweetheart. Your brother is so grateful." I didn't reply. Instead, I sent a quick message to Jana to confirm that everything was on track. "Everything still good?" She responded immediately. "All set. The new owners get the keys on Thursday." The next morning, I woke up early, checked out of the hostel, and headed to the airport. As the plane took off, carrying me to my new life in Pittsburgh, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. My new apartment would be ready in 2 days. My new job started in a week. After buying the apartment, I still had about $65,000 left from the house sale money. I planned to invest wisely, unlike some people I knew. My first week in Pittsburgh passed in a pleasant blur. I settled into my new apartment, a sleek 1-bedroom unit with floor-to-ceiling windows and a stunning view of the city skyline. The neighborhood was lively, full of small cafes and boutiques. My new job came with a private office and a 15% salary increase. Everything was going exactly as planned until Thursday night, exactly 1 week after I'd left town. I was unpacking the last of my kitchen boxes when my phone blew up with notifications. 27 missed calls in just 2 hours. 15 from my mom, 8 from my dad, and 4 from Ryan, plus dozens of frantic text messages, each more desperate than the last. I knew exactly what had happened. Today was the day Ryan and his family were supposed to move into my house. I could picture it perfectly. Ryan pulling up in a rented moving truck packed full of their belongings, knocking on the door, and finding strangers living there. I poured myself a glass of wine and sank into my new couch, debating whether to respond or just block their numbers. Before I could decide, my phone rang again. Mom. Against my better judgment, I answered. Matthew Edward Johnson. My mother's voice was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. What have you done? Hello to you too, Mom, I said calmly, taking a sip of wine. Don't you dare act innocent, she was practically shrieking. Ryan just showed up at your house with a moving truck, and there's another family living there. They said they bought the house 2 weeks ago. That's correct, I confirmed. The Andersons. Lovely couple, 2 teenage kids. They got a great deal. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then she finally spoke. So you sold your house without telling anyone? Her voice was shaking with anger. How could you do something so deceitful? I nearly choked on my wine. Deceitful? I let out a dry laugh. That's rich coming from the person who was planning to kick me out of my own house without even asking. Another silence. Then, in a much quieter, colder voice, she asked, Where are you, Matthew? Pittsburgh. I got a promotion. Senior accountant at the branch office here. Pittsburgh. Her voice cracked. So you just left without saying goodbye? Without telling anyone. Kind of like how you were planning to kick me out of my own house without asking first. I shot back. That's different, she insisted. We're family. We needed your help. No, Mom. I had finally had enough. Ryan and Olivia needed a bailout for their bad decisions, and instead of holding them accountable, you decided that, once again, I should be the one to sacrifice. Like always. That's not fair, isn't it? My voice was sharp now. My entire life it's been Ryan first, Matthew second. When we needed new school clothes, Ryan got the expensive ones. When we both had events, you went to his. When Grandpa died, Ryan got the nice house because you convinced Grandpa that he deserved it more. And now, when Ryan completely screws up, when he and Olivia throw away everything on the worst financial decision imaginable, your solution is to take away the one thing I worked for, my house. Silence. For a moment, I thought she had hung up. Then, in a voice colder than I had ever heard from her, she said, I don't know who you think you're talking to, young man, but I'm still your mother. She paused. And as of this moment, I no longer consider you my son. I had prepared myself for anger, for guilt trips, for manipulation, but this hurt more than I expected. I think we both know that's always been the case, Mom, I said quietly. Oh, and I'm canceling the monthly transfers. The $600 I've been sending for Ryan's family? That's done. She went silent again, and I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. Her anger at me versus her need for my money. We don't want your money, she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. Good, because you're not getting it anymore. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up before she could respond and blocked her number. Then I blocked my dad, Ryan, and Olivia for good. Almost immediately, my phone buzzed with texts from unfamiliar numbers. Ryan using my dad's phone, my mom messaging from friends. I turned my phone off completely and finished my glass of wine in peaceful silence. The next day, I bought a new phone with a new number. I share it only with my closest friends, my new colleagues, and a few extended family members I still trusted, like my Aunt Patty, who sent me a congratulatory bouquet when I told her what I had done. 6 months passed. I thrived in my new position. I made new friends, I dated a bit, nothing serious. Most importantly, I lived life on my own terms without the weight of my family's expectations hanging over me. Occasionally, I thought about them. I wondered if Ryan and his family were still living with my parents. If the investment had ever paid off, I doubted it. If my mom and dad were still covering their expenses, if they ever reflected on how they had treated me, if they ever regretted it. But most of the time, I simply didn't think about them at all. One Sunday morning, as I was enjoying my coffee on the balcony, my phone rang. An unknown number, but with my hometown's area code. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello. Hey, Matthew. This is my cousin, Beth. I hope you don't mind. I got your number from Aunt Patty. I thought you should know what's going on back here. A knot formed in my stomach. What is it? Ryan and his family are still living with your parents. She hesitated. They're having major financial problems. The investment was a complete scam. Eric disappeared with everyone's money months ago. Can't say I'm surprised, I murmured. Yeah, well, she sighed. Your parents are struggling too. They're behind on bills because they've been paying for extra people. Your dad had to come out of retirement and take a part-time job at a hardware store. I said nothing. I waited for the guilt trip, the plea for me to send money again. But Beth surprised me. I'm not telling you this because I think you should help, she said quickly. Actually, the opposite. Everyone in the family is saying you were the smart one for getting out when you did. She paused. Even your mom admitted to my mom that they never should have tried to take your house. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony for a long time, watching the city below. I felt no satisfaction in my family's struggles, but no guilt either. They had made their choices and I had made mine. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself, and I would never go back to being second best again. The phone sat in my hand for a few moments after the call ended. Even though I knew I had made the right choice, there was still something surreal about knowing that my mother had, at least privately, admitted they had been wrong. In a way, I had always known this moment would come. To them, I had always been the backup plan, the reliable one, the person who could be pushed aside because, in the end, I would always give in. But this time, I didn't. I took a deep breath and went back inside my apartment. My life was moving forward. My job was going well, my finances were stable, and for the first time in my life, I was living for myself. The months passed. News about my family became more and more scarce. After Beth's call, I made no effort to keep up with them. If someone mentioned my parents or Ryan, I changed the subject. They weren't my concern anymore. But life has a funny way of bringing the past back, even when you think you've left it behind. Almost a year after my move, I saw them again. I had just returned from a business trip when I decided to take a short detour to my hometown. Not because I missed it, not even close, but because there was something I needed to see with my own eyes. My old house. I drove into the neighborhood feeling a strange mix of nostalgia and relief. But when I turned the corner and parked a short distance away, I barely recognized the place. The new owners had changed everything. They had repainted the exterior, redone the landscaping, and added their own touches. They had made it their home, and I felt absolutely nothing. It was like looking at a closed chapter of my life, one that no longer held any meaning. But before I could leave, I saw someone crossing the street in the distance. My mother. She looked tired. The woman who once cared so much about appearances now had unkempt hair and simple, worn-out clothes. She didn't see me. I watched as she made her way toward a house, my parents' house, the same house where 5 people now lived. I glanced at the property. The paint was peeling, the yard was overgrown, and the porch was cluttered with broken furniture. They were still there, which could only mean one thing. Ryan had never gotten back on his feet. And if he was still there, it meant my parents were still supporting him. Curiosity got the best of me. I needed to see just how bad things had gotten. I parked near a small grocery store in the neighborhood and walked inside. I grabbed a bottle of water and headed to the register. That's when I saw him, my father. He was behind the counter, working. Beth had been right. He had come out of retirement to keep supporting Ryan and his family. He didn't see me, and I made no effort to be noticed. I paid for my water and left. But one thing was clear. They were paying the price for their choices. Ryan never found another real job after losing all his money in Eric's scam. He tried a few small businesses, but none of them worked out. He and Olivia were still unemployed, still relying on my parents for everything. And worst of all, they never even tried to fix their own mess. It was easier to stay where they were. After all, they had always had someone to bail them out. Except now, without my financial help, the entire burden had fallen on my father. My mother, who once lived for status and appearances, no longer had the luxury of pretending. Her days were now spent scrambling to pay overdue bills, negotiating debt, and stretching every last dollar. My father, exhausted, spent his days bagging groceries at a small store, struggling just to keep the lights on. And Ryan, the brilliant son, the one who deserved more, was still doing absolutely nothing. He was living exactly the way my mother had planned for me. Dependent, stuck. The only difference was that I chose to leave. I didn't feel sorry for them. I didn't wonder how they were doing or whether they would ever fix their lives, because it wasn't my problem anymore. I left town without speaking to anyone and returned to my life. A life I had built on my own. It's been 3 years since I left. I haven't spoken to any of them since. Through Beth, I know that my mother and father never recovered financially. The debt kept piling up, and the house they live in is now practically falling apart. My father, too sick to keep working, was forced to quit, and my mother, desperate, had to admit that she had made a mistake putting Ryan first all these years. But the most ironic part? Ryan and Olivia are still there. They are leeches living in my parents' house, waiting for a miracle to fix their lives. Meanwhile, I continue building my best life. My job has opened doors to new opportunities. My social circle has expanded, and most importantly, I have never again been second place in my own life. They made their choices and I made mine. And the best decision I ever made was cutting ties with people who never saw me as a priority. Because, in the end, the only person who can guarantee your success is yourself. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My name's Marcus. I'm 33, single, and apparently the family wallet, or at least that's what they've tried to turn me into. Growing up, I was always the quiet one. Not the golden child like my older sister, Janine, and definitely not the chaotic baby like my younger brother, Kyle. I was just there, reliable, invisible until someone needed a ride, a favor, or nowadays, a payment. I never minded being low-key. I liked solving things on my own, building my life quietly without expecting applause. But lately, it felt like the more I succeeded, the more entitled my family got. And it all came to a head on Janine's birthday. Now, Janine is 35, married with 3 kids, and somehow still acts like a teenager who expects the world to revolve around her. Every year, her birthday gets more extravagant. Last year, it was a catered backyard party with a hired violinist. The year before that, a weekend Airbnb in the mountains that I accidentally got charged for. I should have seen the pattern. But this year, it was dinner at this absurdly overpriced seafood and steak place downtown. A place where the menu doesn't even list prices. Just poetic descriptions like, prime age tenderness kissed with truffle foam. Yeah, that kind of place. Janine texted me the invite 2 weeks before. All casual dinner at 8 o'clock for my birthday. Can't wait to see you. Sparkling heart. No mention of who was paying. That was the first red flag. Still, I told myself, be a good brother. Show up. Keep it light. And I did. I even wore the blazer my ex gave me for job interviews. There were 12 of us total. Janine, her husband, their kids, my parents, Kyle and his girlfriend, an aunt and uncle, and me. As soon as I walked in, it felt off. Janine squealed like I'd just flown in from Paris, hugged me way too long and said, "You finally made it," like I was late. I was 10 minutes early. We were seated at a long table and, from the start, the menu was chaos. The kids ordered filet mignon each and nobody batted an eye. Janine got the lobster and scallops. Her husband ordered surf and turf with extra sides. Even my dad asked for a bottle of some wine I didn't recognize, but knew had a 3-digit price tag just by how the waiter's eyebrows rose when he said it. I ordered grilled chicken and water. I remember my sister smirking. "Still counting calories, Marcus?" I smiled politely and said nothing, already checking my phone under the table to see how much the ATM let me withdraw per day. Dinner was long. Laughter, old stories, lots of toasts to family and to Janine's big day. My mom made a big show of gifting Janine a silver necklace, then whispering to me, "You'll give yours after the cake, right?" I blinked. Gift, I whispered back. She blinked back, confused. The money. You always do. That was the second red flag. And at that point, I was staring straight into the fire. Then came dessert. 3 of them all shared, plus 2 more bottles of wine. Then coffee. My dad leaned back in his chair, hands on his full belly, and looked around with a satisfied sigh. And that's when the bill came. The waiter placed the leather folder down gently, like it was holding sacred scripture. My dad barely glanced at it before sliding it straight in front of me. I waited for someone to say something. Janine just kept chatting with her husband about some new stroller she wanted. My mom sipped her coffee like nothing was wrong. Kyle was on his phone. Marcus, my dad said with that amused dad tone. He always used when he knew he was asking too much but figured he'd get away with it. You don't have kids. It's the least you can do. I swear for a full 5 seconds I thought he was joking. I looked up and down the table expecting someone, anyone, to laugh or say, "Come on, Dad, that's not fair." But nothing. Just silence and sips. Janine was fixing her lipstick and her phone camera. My mom was already pulling on her shawl like the evening was done, and I was supposed to settle the final page like a closing act. I flipped the folder open. $1,840. I don't know what it was exactly that snapped in me. Maybe it was the years of being the responsible one. The "you're so lucky you don't have to deal with daycare or dance recital" comments. Maybe it was the time I lent Kyle $2,000 for a used car he totaled in 3 weeks and never paid back. Or when my parents borrowed money for a leaky roof that miraculously never got fixed. Or when Janine called me, just a guy who codes all day, during Thanksgiving dinner in front of 20 people. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a 20, crisp from the ATM earlier that day. "Then you can split what's left," I said, placing it on top of the bill. I stood, smoothed my blazer, and walked out without looking back. It was like time paused behind me. I heard a sharp inhale, probably my mom. Maybe someone called my name, but I didn't turn. The air outside was cold and sharp, the way city air gets at night when the heat of the day vanishes all at once. I took a deep breath and started walking. I didn't even take my car. Just walked 2 blocks to a bar I liked, ordered a beer, and turned my phone off. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls. 20 from my mom alone. My voicemail was full. The family group chat was exploding. Dozens of texts with everything from "seriously?" to "grow up, Marcus." My favorite was from Kyle. "You embarrassed everyone last night." Mom was crying. I listened to the voicemail from my mom last. Her voice was sharp, controlled in that way where you could tell she was furious but didn't want it to sound like yelling. "Marcus, I don't know what that was last night, but you've embarrassed us all. That was your sister's special night. She was humiliated. You made a scene. Call me back immediately." I didn't call. I didn't explain. I didn't even get mad. I just texted one word back, "Good." And then I sat back, poured myself a coffee, and started thinking. Not about apologies, not about regrets, about the next move. Because I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The silence that followed my one-word reply was almost disappointing. For a whole hour after I sent that text, "Good," I braced for impact. I thought there'd be another barrage, maybe even a knock on my door. But the notifications stopped. The group chat felt dead quiet. No calls, no follow-ups. That's when I knew they weren't cooling off. They were regrouping. See, my family isn't the kind that yells right away. They wound you with guilt, long strategic silences. Then they come back with emotional haymakers. "We raised you. We always supported you. This family has sacrificed so much for you." But they never talk about what I sacrificed. How I paid my own tuition by working night shifts at a warehouse. How I helped Mom when she had her second surgery because Janine was too stressed with the kids. How I let them use my credit card to hold the deposit for Kyle's apartment, just for a few days, that turned into 6 months of collection notices. And how I never once threw it back in their faces. Until now. 2 days later, a letter arrived. A literal envelope mailed. That was Mom's next move, bringing out the old-school emotional warfare. The handwriting on the front was hers, neat and overly formal, like she was writing to a judge. I opened it, already rolling my eyes. Inside was a typed letter, 2 pages single-spaced, signed at the bottom in pen like it was a ceasefire agreement. It started with, "Dear Marcus, we are deeply hurt. Not angry, not disappointed, hurt." That was how they always framed it, like I wasn't allowed to have boundaries because they were the ones feeling pain. They went on to say how unfortunate my outburst was, how humiliated Janine felt in front of the family, and how the evening had been utterly ruined by my uncharacteristic behavior. Then came the part that really got me. "We've always appreciated how generous you've been. That's why we assumed in good faith that covering the dinner wouldn't be an issue. Your father said it jokingly. You took it personally, right? Because casually dropping a nearly $2,000 bill on me was all a joke." But the kicker was the last paragraph. "Your absence at Sunday's family brunch would only widen the rift. We hope you'll do the mature thing and join us at 11 a.m. Janine has already forgiven you." Forgiven me, like I was the one who needed forgiveness. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Something about it, how smug, how twisted it was, flipped a switch in me. For years, I'd swallowed this garbage with a smile. I let them pretend they were just teasing when they belittled me. I let them rewrite history every time I stepped in to clean up their mess and they called it helping out. So no, I wasn't going to brunch. But I wasn't just going to stay silent either. That night, I went into my online banking. I've been doing pretty well. Software consulting, remote contracts, some crypto at the right time. I never brag about it. My family doesn't know how much I really have because if they did, the requests would never stop. Even without knowing the full picture, they'd already turned me into the family ATM. But now, I started doing the math on just how much I'd already funded. I pulled up old Venmo receipts, PayPal logs, even text messages for IOUs they never honored. I added it all up, $6,830 for Kyle's car, insurance and rent shortfalls, $1,200 in temporary loans to my parents over the years, $1,000 for Janine's baby shower, $3,000 toward Dad's emergency dental work, which, spoiler alert, turned into a trip to Cancun with Mom, and countless dinners, events, Uber rides, and gifts from all of us that I alone paid for. I printed every transaction. I annotated them with notes. I turned the whole thing into a neatly stapled packet labeled, "Receipts since you forgot." Then I did something I'd never done before. I sent it to the entire family group chat. No caption, just a photo of the cover page and the words, "This is what I've already done. Consider it my final contribution." Cue the explosion. It started with Kyle, who sent, "What is this?" followed by 10 angry face emojis. Then Janine, who said, "Wow, petty much." My mom followed with a string of increasingly guilt-laced messages. "You're weaponizing your kindness. That's not who you are, Marcus." I sat back, sipping coffee, watching it all unravel. Then came the call from my dad. I didn't answer. The voicemail started calm. "Marcus, son, we need to talk," and quickly dissolved into, "You think money makes you better than us? You wouldn't have anything without this family, right? The family that never once showed up when I defended my thesis. The family that didn't even send a card when I bought my first home. The family that couldn't be bothered to learn what I actually do for work but always knew how to ask me for money." That weekend, I got 6 calls from my aunt, 1 from my grandmother, even a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. "You good, bro?" By the time Sunday brunch rolled around, I was blocking numbers left and right. I spent the morning in sweatpants, watching a documentary and ordering pancakes just for myself. No forced smiles, no polite conversations, no pretending to laugh at Dad's recycled jokes or letting Janine insult me with a smile. But I wasn't done, because there was a final card they didn't know I held. I was still paying for something big, something they'd never connected to me because I kept it separate under a different account name. I paid the tuition for Kyle's last semester of college. The school had my information on file as the emergency contact, the financial backer. Why? Because our parents couldn't co-sign and Kyle begged me for one last chance to get his life on track. He had no idea that his payment deadline was Monday, or that I still had time to pull the plug. And I was seriously considering it. Monday morning came like any other, except this time I wasn't sleepwalking through it. I woke up before my alarm, something I hadn't done in months. No dread, no tight chest, just clarity. My apartment was still dark except for the faint blue from the hallway lights spilling in. And for the first time in a long time I felt still peaceful even. I made myself coffee. Not instant. The good kind. The kind I save for weekends or special occasions. Because today was one. Today was the first day I'd act like I mattered, like I was done being the safety net for people who never once asked how I was doing. The tuition portal for Kyle's university was open. I logged in with the account I set up for him 2 years ago when I agreed to just co-sign and somehow became the sole payer. Tuition was due by 11:59 p.m. A lovely red banner at the top of the page flashed. Pending payment, $8,920. Fall semester. I hovered my mouse over the Pay Now button, then moved to Remove Authorized Payment Method. Click. Confirmed. There. Just like that, I was out. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't even feel angry. I felt awake. Present. Like I was finally stepping out from a shadow I hadn't realized I'd been living in for over a decade. At exactly 9:14 a.m., my phone rang. It was Kyle. I let it ring. Then again at 9:16, then 9:19. By 9:25, I had 8 missed calls and a text that simply said, "Bro, please tell me you didn't cancel the tuition thing." I didn't answer. I watched the little dots appear, then disappear, then reappear. I just got off the phone with financial aid. They said the payment method is gone. WTF. Still didn't answer. I walked to my kitchen, poured more coffee, added cinnamon. Something Janine once mocked me for, calling it bougie, and sat by the window. Outside, the city was moving on. Cars honking, people rushing. But I wasn't rushing anymore. I was watching it like a man who finally realized he didn't have to fix everything for everyone else to keep breathing. At 9:41, I got another text. This one was longer. "Look, I know I've been a fool sometimes. Okay? But you can't just drop this on me the day it's due. I'll get kicked out. You promised you'd help. Don't mess me over like this." That tone. The "you owe me" tone. The same one he used when I refused to lend him money for a new gaming rig last Christmas and he called me a buzzkill. The same tone Janine used when I said I wouldn't babysit her kids last minute because I had an interview. I didn't reply, but I screenshotted the texts. I had a feeling I might need to remind myself later of how quickly the people who need you turn bitter when you stop feeding the cycle. By noon, my mom called again. Voicemail. "Marcus, you need to fix this. Your brother is panicking. I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but this isn't the time to prove a point. We are family, and family doesn't give up on each other." No mention of the birthday dinner. No mention of the $15,000 I'd covered across 3 years. Just a demand disguised as a plea. But the real blow came at 3:37 p.m. Janine. She hadn't texted me since the group chat explosion. Hadn't reached out personally. But now she sent a message that made my blood pressure spike and my jaw clench so hard I thought I might crack a molar. "This is getting out of hand. Just pay the tuition and stop being dramatic. You're not the victim here. You chose to make yourself the bank. Don't act shocked now that people expect you to act like one." That was it. No hello, no apology, just that. I stared at the message for a long time, rereading it like a bad novel where the villain doesn't even bother to hide behind a smile anymore. And for once, I let the anger come, not to explode, not to scream or argue, but to fuel something deeper. I opened my laptop again, went to Google Drive. I had something else I'd been working on. A letter. One I started drafting a year ago when the resentment first began quietly bubbling. Back then, I never intended to send it, it was just journaling therapy. But now it was a manifesto. I polished it, added a preface explaining the full breakdown of everything I'd paid for, supported, co-signed, or contributed to over the last decade. I included screenshots, receipts, emails. I titled it "Why I'm Done," and then I shared it not just in the family group chat, but with every single person who had ever taken part in my financial erosion. The aunt who asked for a quick $500 to cover rent. The cousin who always needed help with just gas money. The uncle who guilted me into investing in a bar he never opened. I sent it to all of them. Within minutes, the calls started again. But I didn't answer. I was already packing. Not because I was running away, but because I had booked a beach trip a week ago, a real one, solo. 5 days. No laptop, no work, no family. Just ocean, books, and silence. And this time I was going. I landed in Tulum just before sunset. The kind of sky that looks fake until you're standing under it. Streaks of pink and orange slicing through clouds like an oil painting left out in the rain. I rolled my carry-on behind me through a quiet little resort with wooden cabanas and no kids in sight. Just quiet. Just peace. Exactly what I needed. When I got to my room, I turned off my phone and left it in the drawer beside the bed. I wasn't ready for more voicemails, more manipulation. I'd spent so many years in fix-it mode, pouring energy, time, money into a family that saw me as useful but never saw me. It was time to unplug. Not to punish them, but to finally reconnect with myself. For the next 3 days, I did nothing but swim, sleep, read, and eat fish caught that morning. No emails, no messages. I watched the sun rise from a hammock, wrote a few thoughts in a notebook, took a yoga class with some strangers from Sweden, and forgot what time it was. But eventually, reality calls. I turned my phone back on the night before my flight home. It nearly buzzed itself off the nightstand. Dozens of messages, missed calls, voicemails that cut off because the inbox was full. Screenshots in the group chat. Angry ones, some desperate, some pathetic even. I scrolled through them slowly, letting the venom roll off me like sunscreen in the heat. My dad's messages were almost predictable. You need to come talk to us like a man. You're acting like a child. No one asked you to pay for everything. Except they did repeatedly. Mom went from guilt-laced pleadings to sharp-edged blame. We don't know what's gotten into you. This isn't how we raised you. You're breaking your grandmother's heart. If your grandfather could see this. And Janine? She stayed true to form. You're being so extra about this. It was a dinner, Marcus. Grow up. You clearly need therapy. I told the kids you're just going through something. They said they hope you feel better. I laughed at that one. The same kids who I bought Christmas presents for every year while their parents bought themselves matching Apple Watches. Then came Kyle's texts. You messed me over, man. I had to go beg Dad for help. They won't pay it. Now I'm locked out of the portal. Thanks. You're just jealous I have something going for me. That last one made me snort out loud. Jealous of Kyle? The guy who'd bounced between 3 majors, 2 part-time jobs, and somehow managed to have a new excuse every semester for why he was almost done. The same brother who once asked if software engineers just fix printers and stuff. Yeah, I was burning with envy, clearly. Then I saw the message that finally pushed me from peace into something colder, sharper. It wasn't from Mom, Dad, Janine, or Kyle. It was from Janine's husband, a single text. Since you want to air dirty laundry, let's talk about what really happened with the house your parents gave you money for. And just like that, it all clicked. This wasn't just bruised pride. This was retaliation. They weren't mad that I drew a boundary. They were scared I might keep doing it, that I might actually walk away and not come crawling back. They were already trying to smear me, rewrite the story, turn it from Marcus finally stood up for himself into Marcus is unstable and vindictive. So I did something I'd never done before. I hit record. The next morning, while I waited for my flight, I filmed a video. Just me speaking calmly, sitting on the little balcony of my resort. I explained everything. Not emotionally, not angrily, just facts. What I'd paid, what I'd been asked to do, the dinner, the bill, the fallout. And then I said the words I never thought I'd say out loud. I'm stepping back from my family, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. I'm done funding guilt trips disguised as love. I'm done being manipulated. If you've ever felt like your only value in a relationship was what you could give, not who you are, this is your reminder that you don't have to keep paying to stay included. Sometimes the cost of being accepted is losing yourself. And I'm not willing to pay that anymore. I didn't post it publicly. I wasn't trying to go viral. But I sent it to every single member of my family. Then I boarded my flight home. When I landed, the silence was deafening. Not a single response, not for hours. But then, around midnight, a text came in from an unknown number. I watched your video. I don't blame you. For what it's worth, I think you were right. Aunt Rachel. Aunt Rachel. The only one who never asked for anything. The only one who once slipped me a $50 bill when I graduated. Whispered, "Don't tell your mom I gave you this," and hugged me like I mattered. She'd always stayed on the fringe of the drama. Never fully in, never fully out, just there, quietly observing. Her message meant more than I expected. But it wasn't the last. The next day, I got a message from my cousin Amanda. Then one from my uncle's second wife. Then another and another. Not a flood, not a tidal wave, but a steady trickle of people who had quietly felt the same for years and never said a word. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd been used. I was just the first one to say no. As for the core four, Mom, Dad, Janine, and Kyle, they fell into radio silence after that, at least publicly. I heard through whispers that Kyle was trying to pick up extra shifts, that Janine was furious I'd embarrassed the family, that Dad told everyone I'd had a midlife identity crisis, and Mom still referred to the dinner as the betrayal. But I didn't reach out. I didn't apologize. I just moved on. I hired a therapist, started journaling for real, made some new friends outside of work, and took an online course in photography just because it made me happy. And one day, a few months later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a card. On the front, a picture of a steak and lobster. Inside, in scratchy handwriting, "Hope this covers my part. Janine." Taped to the card was a $20 bill. I laughed so hard I cried. Not because it was funny, but because it was over. She knew. She understood what that $20 meant. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. She finally saw it. Saw me. And that was enough. I framed the bill, hung it above my desk. A little reminder. Never again pay to be part of something that costs you your peace. Because family isn't who you're born to. It's who treats you like you matter. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My name's Mark. I'm 32. And until recently, I thought I knew what family meant. I thought being the eldest came with certain unspoken duties. Support, protection, sacrifice. I believed that if you gave enough, people would eventually see your value. Turns out I was wrong. It started last spring when my younger brother, Kyle, got engaged. He's 27, charismatic, loud, the kind of guy who turns every sentence into a punchline. He's always been Mom's favorite and Dad's mini-me, the golden child. Meanwhile, I've been the responsible one, the one who stayed close to home, paid off my student loans, and helped my parents with their mortgage when Dad got laid off. Quietly dependable, never flashy, rarely thanked. When Kyle got engaged to his college sweetheart, Lauren, I was genuinely happy for him. I congratulated him, gave him a bear hug, and even offered to take him out for drinks to celebrate. We'd grown a bit distant in recent years, mostly because he seemed to think adulting was optional, but I still remembered teaching him how to ride a bike, sneaking him snacks after bedtime, and covering for him when he crashed Dad's car in high school. Family is family, right? 2 weeks after the engagement, Mom called me sounding frantic. "Mark, honey, Kyle needs help. The wedding's going to be expensive, and Lauren's parents are already stretched thin." I didn't even hesitate. I had some money saved up. I was planning to buy a new car, but I figured I could wait. "How much are we talking?" I asked. That's how I ended up wiring over $12,000 to a joint account my mom had set up for the wedding expenses. It was supposed to cover catering, the venue deposit, and the DJ. She promised they'd invite me to the planning meetings so I could stay in the loop. That never happened. A month passed, then another. Every time I asked about the wedding, the date kept shifting. "We're still finalizing things," Lauren would say with a tight smile. "You know how vendors are." Eventually, Kyle sent a group text. "Save the date, July 14th. We can't wait to celebrate with you all." Except, I never got an invitation. Everyone else in the family did. Cousins, second cousins, even my aunt's new boyfriend. But me? Nothing. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I waited, checked the mail every day. I even texted Kyle, "Hey man, I think my invite got lost in the mail. No response. 2 days later, I got a call from our cousin Jenna. Mark, are you not coming to the wedding? She asked, her voice laced with hesitation. I wasn't invited, I said, trying to keep my voice light. She paused. Kyle told us you were too busy with work. That was a lie. I hadn't mentioned work to anyone. I was already clearing my schedule just in case. Something felt off. So I drove to my parents' house that weekend. I waited until Sunday morning when Kyle was supposed to stop by to pick up some old childhood photos for the wedding slideshow. Mom opened the door, and the look on her face when she saw me said everything. Oh, Mark, you should have called. Thought I'd surprise you, I said. Is Kyle here? Before she could stop me, Kyle walked into the room holding a shoebox of pictures. He looked up and groaned like I was a mess he forgot to clean up. I was wondering when you'd show up, he said. Am I not invited to your wedding? I asked, eyes locked on him. He didn't even flinch, just rolled his eyes and muttered, You at my wedding? You just embarrass me like always. Embarrass him? I stood there stunned. I paid for the damn thing. Embarrass him? What does that even mean? I asked. He smirked. You're just so stiff. You'd make everyone uncomfortable. Lauren agrees. We want the day to be fun, drama-free. I turned to Mom. You knew. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Kyle made the call, honey. It's his day. Don't ruin it. Dad stepped in from the kitchen with a mug of coffee and said nothing. Just nodded like this was all normal. My blood ran cold. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch a hole through the wall. Instead, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the only thing keeping me from breaking down. Right? I said. Don't want to make things uncomfortable. I left without another word. Got in my car and drove home in silence. Every mile stretched like a rubber band, ready to snap. I sat in my apartment staring at the wedding text on my phone, scrolling through family group chats where everyone was gushing about the decor, the location, and the food tasting Lauren posted on Instagram, food I paid for. And that's when something shifted in me. I opened my laptop and pulled up the bank transfer receipts. Every vendor I helped pay for had my name on the agreement. Every single one. I had the contracts, the emails, even some of the invoices forwarded from Mom's account when she forgot to change the billing address. It hit me all at once. I wasn't just cut out. I was used like a walking wallet, forgotten the moment they cashed the check. And they expected me to just sit back and take it. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, but not with sadness anymore. No, I was planning. The venue was the first call, then the caterer, then the DJ. Each one of them was polite at first until I mentioned the name on the contract. Mine. When I asked about cancellation policies and refund timelines, things got very, very quiet. By the time I reached out to the photography team, my hands were steady, cold, like I was performing surgery. I didn't cancel anything just yet. I wanted to see how far they'd go, how much they'd flaunt my generosity without acknowledging it. 3 days before the wedding, I got a text from Lauren. It was the first time she'd ever messaged me directly. Hey Mark, Kyle said you might be coming after all. We just wanted to check for seating purposes. Seating purposes? Not an apology, not an explanation. That's when I knew they weren't sorry. They just wanted to keep using me until the last table was cleared. I stared at that message, thumbs hovering over the keyboard. I didn't respond to Lauren's message, not with words. Anyway, instead, I opened a folder I'd quietly compiled over the past 72 hours. Contracts, bank transfers, email confirmations, all neatly labeled with names, amounts, and cancellation clauses. My lawyer friend, Natalie, had helped me draft a formal notice as the financial party of record for the following services. You get the idea. But I didn't send it yet. I was waiting, watching, measuring just how deep their entitlement ran. And they didn't disappoint. The day before the wedding, my phone buzzed with a flood of Instagram stories. Lauren twirling in her dress at the final fitting. Kyle doing shots with the groomsmen. Mom smiling beside a champagne tower. They even posted a countdown. 24 hours until forever. They had no idea the caterer had already emailed me confirming the refund, minus a small cancellation fee. The DJ was even more polite. Said he'd had a feeling something weird was going on when Kyle tried to change the name on the booking and couldn't. The venue? Oh, they were the best. Said they'd dealt with this kind of thing before and understood completely. Full refund, pending written confirmation. And then came the rehearsal dinner. I wasn't invited, obviously, but my cousin Jenna, bless her, sent me a blurry video from under the table. Kyle stood up at the head of a long, candlelit dinner and toasted everyone. "Thanks to all of you who made this happen," he said, raising his glass. "This wedding is going to be unforgettable, especially since we kept it, drama-free." Laughter. Then Lauren chimed in, "No negativity, just love, family, and friends." They clinked glasses. My mom leaned into the camera's edge and smiled like she was in a Hallmark movie. I watched the video twice, not out of pain, not out of jealousy, but to make sure I hadn't imagined the smugness, the complete and total erasure of me, the person who funded the unforgettable celebration they were toasting. That was my green light. I waited until 2 a.m. Then, one by one, I sent the notices. Vendor, venue, DJ, florist, photographer. I attached the contracts, the cancellation clauses, the refund requests, and a simple statement. I am withdrawing all financial and contractual support for the event scheduled on July 14th. As the paying client, I am exercising my right to cancel these services effective immediately. Then I went to sleep, and I slept like a baby. I woke up at 9:12 a.m. to 17 missed calls. First from Kyle, then Lauren, then Mom's cell, then Dad, then an unknown number that turned out to be the venue coordinator, and then silence. I didn't answer a single one. I just made myself a cup of coffee, put on my favorite hoodie, and scrolled through Instagram like it was a Sunday morning comedy special. At 10:07, Jenna sent me a message. "Mark, what did you do?" Attached was a photo she capped from Lauren's Instagram before it vanished. An empty ballroom with a caption that had since been deleted due to unforeseen circumstances. Apparently, Kyle and Lauren showed up at the venue with their families at 9:30 a.m. sharp, but the doors were locked. No catering trucks, no florists. The chairs hadn't been delivered. The planner was gone. The venue staff refused to let them in, citing a canceled booking. The deposit had been returned to the cardholder, me, less a $350 fee, which I considered a small price for poetic justice. The guests, dozens of them, all standing around in heels and suits in the hot July sun, confused, checking their phones, wondering if they had the wrong address. It gets better. The photographer posted an available today story at noon. The DJ updated his bio to now accepting last-minute bookings. And several guests, ones who hadn't even known I existed a week ago, started posting stories and comments like, "WTF happened to Kyle's wedding?" and all dressed up and nowhere to go. Lauren's maid of honor posted a selfie with the caption, "Well, this is awkward." You could see the empty dance floor behind her. By evening, my mom left me a voicemail. Her voice was tight, controlled, like she was trying not to scream. "Mark, I don't know what you think you've accomplished, but you've humiliated this family. Call me back now." Then Kyle texted, "You just couldn't let me have one thing, huh? Always bitter, always jealous. You ruined the best day of my life." And still not one apology. Not one word acknowledging what they did. No remorse, just blame. So I sent one reply, not to Kyle, not to Mom, not to anyone screaming into the void. I posted on my own Instagram, an account I rarely use, a screenshot of the $12,443 refund to my bank account with the caption, "Wasn't invited, but still paid the bill." So I left early. No tags, no names, just enough breadcrumbs. And the comments rolled in. Family I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me, old friends from college, coworkers. Even Lauren's cousin, who I'd only met once, sent a thumbs-up emoji followed by, "I knew something was off about them." That night, I sat on my couch, Netflix paused in the background, phone buzzing every few minutes, and for the first time in years I didn't feel invisible. I felt free. And that's not even the end, because the real fallout didn't hit until the next morning when Kyle and Lauren tried to rebook everything last minute and realized how many vendors had blacklisted them permanently. The morning after the non-wedding, I turned off my phone for a few hours. Not to avoid the chaos, no, I was savoring it. I didn't need to be told what was happening to know exactly how things were unraveling. I could picture it all. Lauren sobbing, her mascara running down her cheeks in full view of disappointed guests. Kyle pacing, red in the face, barking at vendors through clenched teeth. Mom probably trying to take charge like she always does. Only this time, no one answering her calls. The image alone was more satisfying than any apology they could have faked. When I finally turned my phone back on, I had 52 new messages. Some angry, some desperate, a few surprisingly sympathetic. Most were from Lauren, flipping back and forth between passive-aggressive guilt trips and full-on tantrums. You've ruined our lives. We can't even rebook. Everyone's refusing to work with us now. How dare you ambush your own brother's wedding? This was supposed to be our day. You're so petty, you always have been. Please call me. We just want to understand why. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I opened a message from Jenna. She had filmed another video, this time of the emergency reception that Kyle and Lauren scrambled together last minute. It was in someone's backyard with a half-collapsed tent and folding chairs from a church hall. There was no DJ, just a speaker system playing a choppy Spotify playlist that kept buffering mid-song. The catering consisted of takeout trays from a local pizza joint and a cooler filled with soda. In the video, Lauren looked livid. Her once flawless updo had started to unravel, and her designer heels were digging into the grass. Kyle tried to smile, clinking glasses with a small group of guests, but his eyes kept darting around as if waiting for something or someone to save the moment. But no one came. At one point in the video, Kyle pulled Jenna aside. He clearly didn't know she was recording. "She set this up, didn't she?" he hissed. "She said she wanted a wedding no one would forget. Well, congrats. Everyone's going to remember this for the wrong reason." Jenna, bless her chaotic heart, just sipped her soda and said, "Actually, I think this is exactly what you deserved." She ended the clip with a wink. After watching that, I finally responded to her message. "Pizza and lawn chairs. I almost feel bad. Almost." Her reply was immediate. "They're calling it the recovery reception." Lauren tried to spin it as quirky, wholesome, and spontaneous. Meanwhile, half the guests left after 15 minutes. Then she added, "I'm just glad someone finally stood up to them. I've watched them walk all over you for years. Mark, you deserved better." That message meant more than I expected. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear someone say it. That I wasn't crazy. That I wasn't overreacting. That this wasn't just some petty sibling rivalry. This was a pattern, a long, exhausting pattern of being dismissed, used, and shoved aside the moment I stopped being useful. I kept scrolling through the fallout. One of Kyle's groomsmen posted a group photo captioned, "The wedding that wasn't," followed by laughing emojis. Someone else in the comments asked what happened, and another guest straight up replied, "Apparently, the guy who paid for everything got snubbed, so he pulled the plug." The comment had over 400 likes. Later that evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, it was Lauren's father. His tone was low, measured, embarrassed. "Mark, this is Steven, Lauren's dad. I wanted to apologize. I had no idea you weren't invited. If I'd known, I would have said something. I just assumed since you were footing the bill. I mean, I'm sorry for all of it." There was a pause. "Look, if you ever need a recommendation or help with anything, I own 2 restaurants in the city. Just let me know. You didn't deserve that." That was the only apology I received. Not from Kyle, not from Lauren, not from my parents. Especially not from my mom. Her first real attempt at reaching me came 2 days later with a text that simply read, "We need to talk. This has gone too far." Gone too far? As if I was the one who started it. I stared at the message for a long time, rereading it until the words lost meaning. Then I did something I hadn't planned to do until much later. I logged into the family shared cloud drive, the one I'd been managing for years, the one where I stored every scan bill, every spreadsheet I'd made to keep track of who owed what when Dad was out of work, when Kyle wrecked the Toyota, when Mom's medical bills started piling up. I opened the file labeled Family Budget 2022, and I deleted it. All of it. Not because I was being petty, but because I was done. Done carrying the weight of a family that only remembered me when it was convenient. Done pretending that love and loyalty were one-sided debts I owed. That night, I ordered Thai food, turned on a documentary, and let the silence settle in around me. It was peaceful, like shedding a second skin. But even then, even with the wedding ruined and the mask ripped off, the fallout wasn't over. Because Kyle's next move, that was the one that made this personal in a way I never expected. And when it happened, I realized this wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about everything they thought they could still take. Everything I still had to protect. It happened 3 days after the wedding. I'd just gotten off a call with a client. I work in finance, mostly advising small businesses on how to stay afloat during inflation, when I heard a loud thud at my front door. I wasn't expecting a delivery, but when I opened it, there was a large manila envelope duct taped to the handle. No postage, no return address. I peeled it off, opened it slowly, and found a letter. Typed, cold, legalese wrapped in just enough pettiness to stink of desperation. It was from Kyle, or more accurately, from the attorney he must have found through a Facebook ad. The letter accused me of willfully sabotaging a contracted event, demanded restitution for emotional damages, and laughably claimed I owed them compensation for humiliation endured and irreparable harm to public image. Public image. Kyle sold cars at a dealership with a 2.8-star rating. The best part? The letter also stated that I had no legal right to interfere in a family matter once funds were gifted. Gifted. As if I handed them 12 grand in a birthday card and said, "Do what you want." I laughed. A real guttural laugh. Because the man who stole my seat at the wedding table was now trying to strong-arm me through a boilerplate Canvas template downloaded from a discount lawyer site. I forwarded it to Natalie, my lawyer friend. She called me within minutes, laughing harder than I did. "Tell Kyle I said thanks," she said, still chuckling. "I needed a break from the merger case. This is basically legal origami." She helped me draft a reply, a real one, not a bluff. It included every invoice I'd paid, every signed contract listing me as the financial party, every vendor's cancellation policy, and every line that clearly defined client rights. I even added the tax documents because, yes, I reported it as a business expense. And then we ended it with a paragraph so cold it could have frosted a window. Any further contact made with malicious intent or attempts to defame my character will be pursued through actual legal channels. Kindly remember that courtroom proceedings require evidence, which I have in spades. I printed the letter, stapled the packet, and hand-delivered it to Kyle's front porch, where the remnants of their recovery reception still sat in garbage bags. I placed it gently next to a deflated balloon that read, "Mr. and Mrs." I didn't hear from him for a week. And then the implosion. Apparently, Lauren's family had started asking questions. Real ones. Her dad had called a vendor just for clarification and found out that not only had I funded the wedding, but Lauren and Kyle had tried unsuccessfully to reroute contracts in their own names after my cancellation. The caterer mentioned the word fraud. The florist used the phrase blacklisted permanently. Lauren's dad exploded publicly at a family barbecue, no less. Word got back to me through Jenna that he'd stood up in front of 20 people, waved the invoice from the florist and said, "So this is the son-in-law I'm stuck with? A liar who can't even pay for his own wedding." Lauren was apparently in tears. Kyle stormed off. And Lauren's dad, he pulled his promised investment from Kyle's dream project, a used car lot he'd been trying to co-op with his college buddy. The deal collapsed, the loan was denied, and his credit took a hit. Suddenly, the guy who said I'd embarrass him had no business, no wedding, and no backup plan. But here's where it gets truly poetic. A few weeks later, my parents invited me to dinner. Not together, that would have been too obvious. Separately. Mom called first, her voice trying to sound light, like we were just picking up where we left off. "Mark, sweetheart, it's been too long. Your father and I, well, we were thinking maybe we could all sit down, talk things through as a family." I agreed, not because I wanted to patch things up, but because I wanted to hear them say it out loud. We met at their favorite Italian place, the same one they took Kyle to after his high school graduation. I showed up early, ordered a water, and waited. When they walked in, I could feel the tension in Mom's smile. The way she sat down told me everything. Rehearsed, careful, anxious. Dad didn't even look me in the eye. He just picked up a breadstick and stared at the tablecloth. "So," I said, "this is about Kyle, isn't it?" Mom's smile faltered. "It's about us, Mark." "No," I said calmly. "It's about Kyle and how you let him walk all over me again." She looked down, suddenly interested in the sugar packets on the table. "He made a mistake." "No," I corrected. "He made a choice to exclude me, a choice to lie, a choice to use me then toss me out like trash. And you helped him do it." Dad finally spoke. "We didn't know he hadn't invited you until it was too late." "That's not true," I said. "You told me not to ruin his day. You sided with him like you always do." There was a long silence. Then Mom whispered, "We didn't think you'd take it so personally." I almost laughed. "Personally?" I leaned forward. "You didn't just cut me out of the wedding. You cut me out of the family. And now that it blew up in your face, you want to talk things through. But only because Kyle's spiraling and you need someone to bail him out again." Mom blinked fast. Dad's jaw tensed. I stood up, tossed a 20 on the table. My half of the untouched pasta. "We're done," I said. "I'm not your backup plan anymore." And I left. That was 6 months ago. Since then, a lot's changed. I moved out of the city, started working with a nonprofit that helps low-income families get financial literacy education. Bought myself the car I was saving for before Kyle's wedding drained me. It's nothing flashy, but every time I sit behind the wheel, I remember one thing. It's mine. Paid for with my own hands. Earned. Kyle tried texting me once after that. Just one line. "We all make mistakes, man. Can we move on?" I didn't respond because this wasn't just a mistake. It was a message loud and clear. They saw me as a resource, a wallet, a fallback. But not anymore. Now I wake up every morning with peace in my chest and silence in my phone. No more missed calls. No more begging. No more guilt-tripping disguised as family meetings. Just freedom. The wedding didn't happen. But the awakening? Oh, it did. And I wouldn't trade that for all the invitations in the world. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My name's Kyle and I'm 28 now. But this story starts when I was around 22. Back then, I thought my family would always have my back no matter what. I grew up in a pretty average middle-class household. Me, my older brother Evan, and our parents. Evan was the golden child from the start. He was charming, quick-witted, the type of guy teachers and coaches loved. Meanwhile, I was the quieter one, the one who didn't make waves, but never really got noticed either. It didn't bother me much growing up. I figured that's just how things were. Not every family is perfectly balanced, right? But as we got older, the gap between Evan and me got a lot wider. By the time he was 25, Evan had this shiny job at a prestigious firm downtown, drove a brand new BMW, and posted pictures every weekend of himself at rooftop bars with other people who looked like they just stepped out of a magazine. My parents couldn't stop bragging about him. Every family gathering turned into an Evan highlight reel. And me? I was working my way through college, juggling 2 part-time jobs, barely keeping my head above water. They loved Evan's polish. They tolerated my scrappiness. Despite all that, I still admired him stupidly. I genuinely believed he had it all figured out. And I guess deep down, I wanted him to be proud of me, too. That's probably why when he asked if I could help him with a little problem at work, I agreed without thinking twice. The little problem turned out to be anything but. Evan had been messing around with some confidential client files. Nothing malicious, just stupid arrogance and carelessness, and he needed someone to help him fix it before anyone higher up noticed. I was studying IT security back then, so he figured I could cover his tracks. I was hesitant, really hesitant, but he guilt-tripped me hard, playing the "we're brothers, you owe me" card. And honestly, I just didn't want to let him down. So I agreed. I snuck into his office late one night, logged into his computer, and did some digital housekeeping. I thought it was over. It wasn't, not even close. About 2 weeks later, Evan got called into a meeting. Someone higher up had noticed something weird in the system logs, something that pointed directly to his terminal. Somehow, my cleanup job wasn't perfect. Evan was fired on the spot. No severance, no references, nothing. He came home that night like a storm, slamming doors, throwing things around the house. I'll never forget it. He cornered me in the kitchen, his face red and twisted in a way I'd never seen before. "You ruined everything for me," he screamed, his voice cracking with rage. "You incompetent fool. I should have known better than to trust you with anything important." I stood there stunned, the words hitting harder than I ever would have expected. Before I could even process what was happening, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him so hard a picture fell off the wall. The next few days were a blur. I figured, okay, he's mad. He'll cool off. We'll talk. Maybe it would even bring us closer somehow, like brothers who've been through something. But that hope died quickly. I started getting cold, clipped texts from my parents. Then the calls stopped altogether. Then the invitations to family dinners stopped coming. It wasn't just distance. It was a total cutoff. Like I didn't exist. I finally cornered my mom on the phone after a week of trying. Her voice was icy. "I can't believe you would sabotage your own brother's career out of jealousy," she said. "You need to get help, Kyle." I felt the ground shift under my feet. I tried explaining, tried telling her the truth, but she just kept cutting me off. "Save it. Evan told us everything." Turns out Evan hadn't just been angry. He'd been methodical. He told them I had intentionally messed with his files because I was jealous of his success, that I wanted to drag him down so I could feel better about my own failures. It was such a ridiculous lie. But the worst part was they believed him without question. The months that followed were the loneliest of my life. No family birthdays, no holiday invitations, no random texts from cousins. I buried myself in school, took extra shifts at work, kept my head down. I told myself I didn't care. But the truth was, every time a holiday rolled around, it hit me like a truck. Meanwhile, Evan was busy rebuilding his life. He got a new job, lower status, but still respectable. He started dating a woman named Heather, who was just as polished and perfect as him. They got engaged after a year with engagement photos plastered all over social media. Everyone gushed about how happy they were, how Evan deserved all the good things coming to him after everything he'd been through. Every photo, every comment felt like a slap in the face. I thought about clearing my name so many times. I even drafted long emails, point-by-point breakdowns of what really happened. But every time I chickened out. Some part of me still clung to the hope that maybe they'd realize the truth on their own, that maybe Evan would feel guilty enough to confess. Of course, he didn't. He was too busy polishing his perfect image. It wasn't until about 3 years later that fate handed me a lifeline I didn't even know I needed. I got a job offer from a mid-sized tech firm. Good salary, real benefits, my first real shot at stability. During my onboarding, I recognized a name on the leadership team, one of Evan's old colleagues from his first firm, the one where he got fired. I didn't think much of it at first until one day, during a casual lunch with a few coworkers, someone brought up old office horror stories. My new boss chuckled and said, "Man, there was this one guy years ago, brilliant on paper, but a total disaster. Thought he could outsmart the entire system. Ended up trying to blame his brother for covering his tracks when it all blew up. Crazy stuff." I froze, my sandwich halfway to my mouth. He didn't say Evan's name. He didn't have to. Later that night, I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. This was it, the smoking gun I never thought I'd find. Proof from someone outside my family, someone neutral, someone credible. Proof that Evan's whole narrative was a lie. For the first time in years, the anger that I had tried so hard to bury started burning again, hotter and sharper than ever. I had spent so long swallowing the betrayal, convincing myself it wasn't worth fighting back. But now I realized it wasn't about revenge. It was about finally reclaiming the part of me that Evan had stolen. I started planning carefully, methodically, the way Evan had lied about me years ago. I wasn't going to confront him privately. No, I was going to wait for the perfect moment. One where the entire family could see the truth for themselves, where there would be no room for lies or damage control. And that moment came faster than I expected. It was at Evan's engagement party. A huge, lavish affair at some rented event space downtown with all the family and extended friends packed into one sparkling room. I hadn't been invited, of course, but my cousin, bless her, secretly texted me the time and location. She didn't believe Evan's story either, but had been too scared to speak up. As I stood outside the venue that night, clutching a flash drive with everything I needed, my heart hammered so loudly I thought people nearby might hear it. Part of me still wanted to turn around to let sleeping dogs lie. But then I pictured Evan's smug smile, my parents' cold disappointment, all the birthdays and holidays spent alone. No, it was time. I walked up to the doors, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. And right as I made my way through the crowd, I locked eyes with Evan, who went pale the moment he saw me. That's when everything started unraveling. For a second, the entire room seemed to freeze. Evan's eyes widened like he was staring at a ghost. His fiancée, Heather, glanced between us, confused. A few relatives noticed the sudden tension, too, and started whispering behind their hands. But Evan, ever the master of appearances, quickly slapped on a wide, fake smile and crossed the room toward me like we were long-lost friends. "Kyle," he said, voice a little too loud, too forced. "Didn't expect to see you here, buddy." He tried to clap me on the back, but I shifted away just enough to make it obvious. I smiled back, small, calm. "Yeah, funny thing. I figured tonight would be the perfect time to clear the air." Evan's face twitched, just a flicker, but it was enough. Heather stepped forward, looping her arm through Evan's. "You must be Kyle. I've heard a lot about you." She laughed nervously. "Glad you could make it." There was a microphone set up near the bar for speeches later. My palms were sweating, but I kept walking toward it, my shoes echoing sharply in the fancy hall. Conversation started dying down as more people noticed. Evan hissed under his breath, "Kyle, don't. Not here." I picked up the mic and tapped it once. Feedback squealed for a second, making a few guests wince. "Sorry, everyone," I said, my voice carrying through the room. "I know I'm not technically on the guest list, but if you could give me just a minute, I'd appreciate it. I promise it's important." The room stilled, curious now, slightly uncomfortable. Evan was frozen about 10 feet away, his smile rigid, his hands clenched. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and held it up. 3 years ago, I began, keeping my voice even and steady. "I was cut off from this family because of something my brother told you all. He said I sabotaged him out of jealousy, that I ruined his career." Murmurs rippled across the room. Evan's parents, my parents, stood near the front, staring at me with a mix of confusion and growing alarm. "I stayed silent," I continued, "because I thought maybe someday the truth would come out on its own. But it didn't. So, here we are." I walked over to the laptop connected to the big projector screen set up for the engagement slideshow and plugged in the flash drive. A few seconds later, an email popped up, an internal memo from Evan's old firm, anonymously leaked to me by my new boss. It detailed the investigation, the firing, and most importantly, it stated explicitly that Evan had tampered with files himself and tried to shift the blame onto a relative with limited access to company systems. I clicked through slowly, letting the words sink in. I heard gasps. One of my aunts dropped her champagne glass. "And just in case anyone thinks this could be faked," I added, pulling out a printed letter with a company seal. "Here's a signed statement from the firm's legal department confirming it." I let the silence settle, heavy and choking. Evan surged forward, finally, voice cracking. "He's lying. He probably faked all of this. You can't believe this. He's bitter. He's been obsessed with ruining me." I turned to him slowly. "Funny, Evan. That's exactly what you accused me of." Heather was staring at him now, her mouth slightly open. She looked at me, then back at Evan. "Is it true?" she whispered, but the mic still picked it up, projecting her words across the room. Evan sputtered, looking around wildly for backup. But the room wasn't on his side anymore. People were backing away. Some were shaking their heads. My parents looked shell-shocked, my mom clutching my dad's arm like she needed support to stay standing. I handed the mic back to the stand. "That's all I wanted to say," I said. Thanks for listening. I turned and walked away without looking back, heart hammering, but head high. I didn't stay to watch the aftermath, at least not in person. But the texts started pouring in within an hour. My cousin sent me a blurry photo of Evan slumped at a table, his perfect world crumbling around him while Heather screamed at him in front of half the family. Another message came from my uncle. I'm so sorry, Kyle. We should have listened. By the next morning, Evan's engagement was called off. Half the family had blocked him. My parents left me a voicemail, my mom crying, begging me to come over so they could talk. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready for that yet. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't even realized I'd lost. Freedom. But even as I stared at my phone, watching the messages stack up, a part of me knew this wasn't the end. I spent the rest of that night sitting on the balcony of my apartment, the cool night air wrapping around me like a second skin. My phone buzzed over and over on the table next to me. Missed calls, voicemails, texts that started frantic. Please call us, Kyle, and gradually grew more desperate. We need to explain. You don't have the full story. Come home. Home. What a joke. The truth was, home had stopped being home the day they believed Evan's lies without even hearing my side. Now, their sudden realization didn't feel like a warm welcome back. It felt hollow, convenient. They didn't miss me. They missed the image of a family they could parade around at holidays. I ignored the calls for days. I buried myself in work, in late nights at the office, in coffee shop noise, and crowded grocery stores where I could be just another anonymous face. Every time my phone buzzed, the knot in my stomach twisted tighter, but I refused to cave. I told myself they didn't deserve another piece of me, not after everything. But then, about a week later, my cousin Mia showed up at my door. She stood there soaking wet from the rain, clutching a Tupperware container and looking like she'd aged 10 years in 7 days. I didn't even think before letting her in. I know you probably don't want to see anyone, she said, voice shaky. But Mom said you haven't been answering, and I figured if I brought your favorite lasagna, you might at least listen. We sat at my tiny kitchen table while she spooned out soggy, steaming squares of lasagna onto chipped plates. For a long time, we just ate in silence. Then she finally spoke. You should know it's chaos over there, Mia said. After you left the party, Uncle Dave cornered Evan and he cracked. Admitted everything. Said you owed it to him to take the fall. Said you were just the backup plan if he got caught. I swallowed a bitter laugh. Backup plan. That about summed it up, didn't it? Mia looked down at her plate, pushing the food around with her fork. Your mom's been crying nonstop. Your dad's, well, he's furious. Not at Evan. At himself. Says he should have known better. I didn't say anything. I couldn't trust my voice not to crack. They're planning a family dinner, Mia said, grimacing like the words themselves tasted sour. They want you to come. They want to apologize publicly. I stared at her, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no glee, just an empty, heavy sort of exhaustion. I'll think about it, I said finally. The truth was, I didn't know if I could go. What would it even fix? No apology would erase the years they abandoned me. No sorry would erase sitting alone on Thanksgiving or pretending Christmas didn't exist, because I couldn't stand the pity from strangers. Still, curiosity gnawed at me. When the invite came a few days later, a formal, printed card like they thought fancy paper would make it more real, I almost threw it out. But something in me, something stubborn and sharp, refused to let Evan have the last word. I needed them to see, really see who I'd become without them, that I wasn't some broken, bitter person living in their shadow. I needed them to realize they hadn't destroyed me. They had only freed me. So, the night of the dinner, I dressed carefully. Sharp navy button-down, black slacks, clean, polished boots. I looked good, professional, confident, and for the first time I felt it too. When I walked into the restaurant, a hush fell over the private dining room. Heads turned. I saw my parents sitting stiffly at the head of a long table, the rest of the family scattered awkwardly around them. Mia waved weakly from her seat. Evan sat farther down, slouched low in his chair, looking like he wanted to melt into the carpet. For a moment, I just stood there letting them all see me. Not the loser Evan painted. Not the jealous little brother. Me. My mom rose first, wringing her hands. Kyle, sweetheart. Thank you for coming. Please sit. Let's. I'll stand, I said calmly, cutting her off. Her face crumpled a little, but she nodded. My dad cleared his throat. Kyle, we owe you the biggest apology of our lives. We were wrong about everything. He stumbled through the words like each one weighed 100 pounds. My mom's voice broke halfway through hers, tears streaming down her face. A few aunts and uncles added their own apologies, some more sincere than others, and then silence. Everyone turned to Evan. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His once perfect hair was disheveled, his jaw unshaven. Heather was noticeably absent. He couldn't even meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Evan muttered finally, staring down at the tablecloth. For everything. It was pathetic, half-hearted, a formality, not a reckoning. And somehow, seeing him like that, so small, so broken, didn't bring me the satisfaction I thought it would. I realized something in that moment. Evan had already lost everything that mattered. His reputation, his relationship, his family's trust. He was living in the wreckage of the lies he built, and it would follow him for the rest of his life. I didn't need revenge. I had already won. I straightened, slipping my hands into my pockets. Thank you for the apologies, I said evenly. But I'm not here to make everything go back to the way it was. That's not possible. My mom's face crumpled further. My dad looked down at his hands. Some of the relatives shifted uncomfortably. I'm not angry anymore, I continued. But I've built a life without you. A good one. I'm not interested in tearing it down to squeeze back into a family that didn't want me when it mattered. I let the words hang there, heavy and final. I wish you all the best, I added, meaning it more than I thought I would. Really. But I'm moving forward without you. And then, without waiting for a response, without giving them a chance to argue or beg, I turned and walked out. The cold night air kissed my face as I left the restaurant, but this time it didn't sting. It felt cleansing, like I was finally walking out from under a heavy shadow that had been following me for years. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I drove home in silence. No music, no radio, just the low hum of the tires on the road. My mind wasn't racing the way I thought it would be. There was no second-guessing, no pangs of guilt twisting in my chest, just a steady, quiet certainty. I had said everything that needed to be said. When I got home, my phone was flashing again. Missed calls, unread texts, voicemails stacking one after the other. I scrolled through them absently. Some were from my parents, more frantic now, some apologizing again, some begging me to come to Sunday dinner just to talk. A few were from cousins telling me they admired how I handled myself, saying they were proud of me. Even Mia's was simple. You did the right thing. I'm here if you ever want to hang out. And then there were Evan's messages. At first, they were short. Kyle, please call me. Then longer. I didn't mean for everything to go so far. Finally, pitiful. I don't have anyone left. Please. I stared at the last one for a long time, feeling nothing. There was no anger, no triumph, just a detached kind of sadness. The kind you feel when you walk past a crumbling old house you used to love as a kid. You mourn what it used to be, but you know it's too far gone to save. I powered off the phone without answering and tossed it onto the couch. The next few weeks passed in a strange, almost surreal blur. I expected the guilt to creep in the way it always used to when I stood up for myself. But it didn't. Instead, I found myself lighter, free in a way I had never been before. I started going out more, not to drink or party, but to really live. I signed up for a photography class I'd always wanted to try. I joined a weekend hiking group. I even reconnected with a few old friends I'd lost touch with while I was buried under the family drama. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't weighed down by the need to prove anything to anyone. It wasn't just my personal life that changed. Work thrived, too. Without the constant emotional drain, I had more energy to focus on my career. A few months after the engagement party, I landed a major promotion, one that put me in charge of a small team. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine, earned through quiet perseverance and grit, not handed down through favoritism or backroom deals. One sunny Saturday morning about 6 months later, I sat at a local park with Mia, sipping coffee and watching the dogs chase each other across the field. She had become one of the few family members I still spoke to, not out of obligation, but because she had proven she deserved a place in my life. "I saw Evan the other day," Mia said casually, breaking the comfortable silence. I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah." She nodded, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "He looks bad. Lost his job again. Word is he's couch-surfing between friends, but most people don't want him around. Apparently, Heather's family blacklisted him in their social circles, too." I didn't feel any pleasure at the news, just a quiet resignation. "He did it to himself," I said simply. Mia studied me for a moment. "You really don't hate him, do you?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," I said finally. "I don't. I just don't trust him, and I don't want him in my life. It's not hate. It's indifference." Mia smiled a little, like she was proud. "That's real freedom, you know? Not caring enough to hate." We finished our coffee in peaceful silence, the sun warm on our backs. Time moved on as it always does. The family kept trying to pull me back in. Holiday invitations, group chats, polite emails, but I kept my boundaries firm. I sent polite declines, wished them well from a distance, and lived my life on my own terms. Over time, the invitations slowed. The texts became less frequent. Eventually, the desperate outreach faded into a dull, infrequent hum, background noise I barely noticed anymore. And somewhere along the way, I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't about letting people back into your life. It's not about pretending the hurt never happened or allowing yourself to be used again. It's about letting go of the anger so it doesn't chain you to the past. I forgave them not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. One evening, about a year after the engagement party, I found myself standing on the balcony of my new apartment, a bigger, brighter place downtown that overlooked the river. The city lights shimmered below, the air humming with quiet life. I thought about the boy I used to be, the one who craved his brother's approval, who bent over backward to earn a place at a table that was never really set for him. He was gone. In his place stood a man who knew his own worth, who didn't need permission to live a full, vibrant life. A soft breeze tugged at my shirt as I leaned on the railing, smiling to myself. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was free. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My sister sent me his baby shower registry. A $12,000 stroller, a luxury crib, and a down payment for a house. I laughed and said, "Absolutely not." He shouted, "Then don't bother showing up." So I didn't, and what happened next had the whole family turning on her. It all started with an email titled, "We're so excited to welcome baby Ethan." My sister's baby shower invitation, complete with pastel fonts, floating teddy bears, and a link to her registry. First, I smiled. She'd always been a little dramatic, always loved the spotlight, but baby showers are allowed a little fluff. I clicked the link, expecting to see a few overpriced onesies, maybe an organic bottle set, a trendy mobile. Nothing prepared me for what actually loaded there. It was a $12,000 stroller imported from Sweden, custom embroidery, real leather handle, then a $6,800 crib from some boutique in LA that apparently only makes 5 cribs a year, a $400 wipe warmer, a diaper pail that required its own subscription service, and then at the very bottom, a contribution pool for a down payment on a house. The goal, $100,000, and not a joke in sight. I scrolled twice, then laughed so hard I actually had to sit down. I mean, I make good money, but I wasn't about to blow a paycheck so her newborn could nap in something more expensive than my first car. I honestly thought maybe she'd been hacked or that her husband, that smug little grifter she married, had gotten control of the registry and turned it into some kind of scam. So I called her. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some laughter and an embarrassed, "Oh my God, Barbara, it's just a joke." But instead, she said she didn't appreciate me calling with that tone and reminded me that they were building a life now, that their circle was full of generous people who understood what it meant to invest in family. I told her I'd be bringing a book set and a handmade blanket like any normal human being. She said, if I couldn't support their vision, then I shouldn't bother showing up. Then, and I'll never forget this, her husband grabbed the phone and said exactly this: if you're not going to be part of the future, then stay in the past. So, I stayed in the past at home with a glass of wine and a warm lasagna. And I didn't send a gift. I figured that would be it. But oh no. 3 days later, I woke up to 3 missed calls, 2 angry texts from our cousin Marie, and a novel-length Facebook post from my sister that started with, "Some people just can't handle when others win." The whole post was a martyr's anthem about fake family jealousy and how they were being punished for dreaming big. I ignored it for a day. Then Jenny, our other cousin, sent me photos from the shower. My sister had gone full influencer mode. Professional photographer, balloon arches the size of small buildings. A massive table labeled gift display that apparently remained almost completely empty except for a few gift cards and a couple small boxes. No crib, no stroller. So where did the photos come from? She posted new ones the next day, showing off the entire nursery. Every item from the registry was beautifully arranged with a long caption about being surrounded by support. But something was off. The tags were still on everything. It took my brother exactly 5 minutes to figure it out. He reverse image searched the stroller and found it on a luxury baby rental site. You could rent these things for $300 a day. Photo shoots, influencer deals, baby showers. My sister had rented it all, taken the pictures, and returned it the next morning. So now it wasn't just greed. It was delusion performance, a fantasy she wanted everyone to help her act out. That's when I stopped laughing because I knew something she didn't think I knew, and I was done playing along. The truth was I'd kept my mouth shut for too long. My sister's been like this for years. Reckless, entitled, obsessed with appearances. Most people in the family just saw her as a little over the top, a little too into labels, luxury, all that. But I knew better. I knew what she really was back in 2020 when she moved back in with Mom and Dad for a few weeks. She stayed for 6 months. She didn't pay rent, didn't lift a finger. She claimed she was job hunting. But I saw her in the middle of the day on her laptop yelling at some online dealer for rigging a hand. She was gambling constantly, poker, blackjack, sports bets, all of it. She burned through her savings in 3 months. Then she sold her laptop, her jewelry. One night I came home and she was crying in the kitchen. Said she was in debt. Begged me not to tell Mom. I didn't. I covered for her. Even lent her $1,200. That money vanished in 3 days. She told me she was going to pay me back after she hit a streak. But I let it go. I thought maybe she was just lost. But then she started stealing. She transferred money from Mom's account, bought something off an app, then returned it for cash. Claimed it was an accident. Mom believed her, said she was under stress, told me not to make things worse, so I didn't. And here we were 4 years later with her pregnant, married, and acting like a Kardashian in the suburbs, demanding tens of thousands from our family for a child that wasn't even born yet. When she posted that fake nursery photo thanking everyone for making her dreams come true, I snapped. I didn't blast her publicly. I'm not like her. But I called Aunt Deb. I asked her if she really planned to contribute to the down payment fund. She laughed and said no, but admitted she thought the whole thing was a bit much. That's when I told her everything. The gambling, the fake gifts, the rentals for Instagram. I told her she wasn't helping a struggling new mom. She was funding an illusion. At first, Aunt Deb was stunned. Then she got angry because she'd already sent them $2,000. It spread fast. Deb told her husband. He told their kids. Within 48 hours, 6 people had called me asking for the full story. I didn't hold back. I was tired of protecting someone who only ever used people. And then came the fallout. My cousin Jenny backed out of the SIP and C. My uncle Rob, who had offered to help with the nursery renovation, pulled the plug and ghosted her. A few family friends who had RSVP'd suddenly had other plans. But the worst blow was from her husband's side. Her mother-in-law called my mom. She was polite but direct. Said they'd been getting weird vibes from my sister for months. Money going missing, strange charges, emotional outbursts. They didn't know what was going on until they heard what I told Aunt Deb. That's when they confronted my sister and apparently she cracked. Admitted to borrowing from their account, lied about some of it, blamed the stress, tried to turn it into a pity story, but it didn't work. 2 days later, her husband left. Not permanently at first. He told her he needed space, said he was going to stay at his parents' place until the baby came. She was humiliated, but instead of apologizing or doing anything remotely normal, she doubled down. She showed up at my house in the middle of the day, no warning. I opened the door and she was already mid-rant. Told me I'd ruined her life, that I was jealous of her family, that everything was fine until I started spreading lies. I stood there and let her talk. Then I told her she was lucky I didn't tell everyone the rest. Because there was more. So much more. She stole money from mom again last year. $5,000. Claimed she needed it for prenatal vitamins and furniture. Spent it in a weekend at a casino in Atlantic City. Mom covered for her, but now people were done covering. 2 days after she screamed at me, Mom finally cracked, too. She called her and told her she wasn't giving her another cent. Then she made a group chat with the family and sent a single message. No more money. If you choose to help her, do it knowing the truth. It was over after that. My sister posted one last thing on Facebook. A vague quote about betrayal and snakes in the grass. She deleted it 6 hours later, probably because nobody commented. But that was just the beginning of her unraveling. Part 3 is when things get worse. Much worse. Let me know when you're ready. After Mom's group text, the one where she told everyone flat out, if you choose to help her, do it knowing the truth. The silence wasn't just noticeable. It was cold. No arguments, no dramatic replies, just quiet. The kind that settles in right before everything breaks apart. Started small. Her college friend, Alyssa, untagged herself from all the baby shower photos. Her coworker from the yoga studio, the one she was always bragging about being like a sister, removed her from her close friends list on Instagram. And the babysitter she'd hired months in advance to help after the birth was suddenly unavailable due to a family emergency. But the biggest crack came from her in-laws, her husband's parents. Up until that point, they'd been supportive, smiling through everything. Even when she made that ridiculous registry, they said nothing. But once they heard about the gambling, the stolen money, the fake photo shoot, they cut contact entirely. Her husband started spending more time away. He told her it was to keep things calm for the baby. But I knew the truth. He was building his exit, brick by brick. I could see it in his silence. He wasn't coming back. That's when she panicked. The money she got from the registry? Gone. She'd burned through it in weeks. Most of the items she posted were returns, rentals, or borrowed. The luxury crib was back in the warehouse. The stroller had been a one-day rental for $290. Even the designer diaper bag was listed online for resale, tags still on. Then, Aunt Deb emailed her. She asked for her $2,000 back. No drama, just a short, sharp message. Considering the circumstances, I'd like my contribution returned. Hope the baby is well. No reply. The next day, Cousin Jenny did the same. And Uncle Rob and Lisa from her husband's side. A woman who had never even liked our family, but had apparently sent her $500 just to be nice. Nobody got an answer. She ignored them all, probably hoping if she stayed quiet long enough, they'd forget. Instead, they got louder. People started talking openly now. Nobody was hiding it. Uncle Rob told Mom he'd offered to help them redo the nursery, but after hearing she'd blown their joint savings on a sure-win parlay bet, he pulled the money and told her husband directly, "You need to get out before she takes everything." Then her husband texted me. I had never had a real conversation with him before, but now he wanted answers, asked me if she had a problem. I didn't lie. I told him she was in deep. I told him about the online gambling, the hidden debts, the money from Mom's retirement account, about how she cried to me, begged, lied, and then did it again and again. He went quiet for a few days. Then he left her, took his things and moved in with his parents, told her he needed space. What he really meant was legal distance. He'd already started the paperwork to separate their finances. A friend of his worked in family law. He wasn't playing around. That was when she showed up at my house again, alone this time. No ring, no car. She'd taken an Uber. Said she needed help. Said she was scared. She didn't cry. She looked exhausted. Not fake influencer exhausted. Real, raw, scared of the mirror, tired. I asked her how much debt she was in. She didn't answer. Just stared at me like I was supposed to fix it. I told her no. That's when the final blow landed. Our uncle, the one who co-signed a $20,000 private student loan for her years ago, got a call. She hadn't made a payment in months. She told him it was on autopay. It wasn't. He was now legally responsible for the full balance. He tried to call her. No answer. Then he called me. He said he was done. No more favors. No more support. She's not just reckless. She's dangerous, he told me. 2 weeks later, the baby was born. A boy, healthy, perfect. I wasn't there. None of us were. She posted a single photo on Instagram. No filters, no props, just a dimly lit hospital room and a newborn wrapped in a generic blue blanket. No tags, no captions, just his name and the date. And for the first time in years, she didn't ask for anything. No gifts, no fund, no second chance. But it wouldn't last. I thought after the baby was born and her husband left, she'd finally disappear. Maybe go quiet for a year, lick her wounds, come back changed. But people like her don't go quietly. They don't feel shame the way normal people do. They just wait, watch, plot the next move. Exactly 22 days after the birth, I saw her name pop up on Jenny's phone. Jenny and I were at a coffee shop. She turned her screen toward me like it was burning a hole through the table. The message said, "I'm in a better place now. I'd love to reconnect and rebuild what really matters." No apology, no acknowledgement, just straight into a clean slate. Jenny didn't answer. She blocked her instead. Then came Aunt Deb's email, a copy-pasted template saying my sister was actively pursuing a repayment plan and would appreciate grace during this difficult but transformative period. I knew that language. It came straight from a bankruptcy self-help blog. Aunt Deb forwarded me the message with a single sentence. "She still thinks we're stupid." Then the sympathy campaign began. A photo on Instagram. The baby asleep on a bare mattress. No crib sheets, no blanket, just an empty room and bad lighting. Caption, "Alone." Comments turned off. It worked for a few people. One of our old neighbors messaged me asking if she could send clothes. Another offered to drop off diapers. I didn't tell them no, but I told them the truth. That she had thrown out most of what people gave her. That she sold a brand new bottle set and used the cash for slots. People started hesitating. That's when I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I put it all together. Everything. A timeline, copies of texts, receipts, the photo of the fake nursery, screenshots of her GoFundMe before she deleted it, a spreadsheet of debts I knew about, a list of people she borrowed money from and never paid back. I didn't send it to the family. I sent it to one person, her husband's mother. She didn't reply, but 5 days later, my sister was served with papers. Temporary custody shifted. The baby was now staying with her husband 3 days a week, moving toward a formal custody agreement. My sister's reaction? She went quiet online. No more stories, no more vague quotes about snakes and betrayal. It was like watching a switch flip. But just when I thought it was over, she pulled something I never saw coming. She applied for a job at my office. My boss called me in, confused, holding her resume. I didn't even need to look at it. I already knew she'd lied. Claimed she worked as an executive coordinator at a luxury event firm in the city. Said she managed budgets, team leads, even celebrity accounts. That firm? Owned by a friend of mine. She never worked there. She once babysat their dog. My boss raised an eyebrow and asked if it was a joke. I handed him a printout of her baby registry, her Instagram post with the fake nursery, and a screenshot of her GoFundMe campaign from a month earlier. He nodded slowly, put the resume in the shredder and said, "That's a new one." I didn't hear from her again for a while after that until the message came through. Unknown number, just one line. "You've ruined everything for me." I blocked it. No hesitation. But a few days later, Mom called. Said my sister had shown up at church alone. Sat in the back. No baby. Didn't speak to anyone. Left halfway through. No scene. No performance. just a shadow of who she used to be. I didn't know what to think. Maybe it was real this time. Maybe rock bottom had finally landed. Then I got a message from an old coworker. He sent me a link to a new GoFundMe titled, "Help a New Mom Rebuild Her Life. Goal $50,000. I didn't even open it right away, but when I did, I felt my stomach turn. She used a photo of me holding her baby from the day I visited the hospital months ago. Cropped tight to hide the hospital ID tags. Made it look like we were best friends, partners in this comeback story. Her pitch was full of lies. Said she was raising her son alone with no help from her toxic, estranged family. Said she'd left an abusive relationship. Claimed she was in therapy, working 2 jobs, trying to build something honest. And people were donating hundreds. That was it. This wasn't desperation anymore. It was fraud. Seeing my face on her GoFundMe page felt like being slapped in a room full of people who didn't know what really happened. There I was holding her newborn, cropped in tight to make it seem like we were close, like I was standing by her side in her healing journey. And there she was spinning lies to strangers for money. She said she'd been abandoned by her abusive family, that she was raising the baby alone, that she just lost her job, not true, her apartment, also not true, and her entire support system, true, but earned. She wrote, "My sister has refused to even meet my baby. I'm doing everything alone." Except the photo was from the hospital. I had met the baby. I held him before her husband did, but she cropped out the timestamp, edited out the truth, and made me her prop. It wasn't just desperation anymore. This was theft. I didn't yell. I didn't call her. I built a file. Screenshots of every lie she told. The GoFundMe text, the baby registry, her fake resume, the fake job she claimed to have, the real job she tried to get at my office, the temporary custody agreement, the text messages to family begging for money, the ones she ignored, the ones where she promised to pay it all back and never did. Then I sent it to GoFundMe. Everything. They shut the campaign down in less than 2 days. The money, almost $3,000, was refunded. The page disappeared like it never existed. But the fallout wasn't just digital. A few of the donors were people she knew. A woman from her old yoga studio, a teacher she'd had in high school, one of her husband's old co-workers. They reached out, some to me, some to her. One of them, the yoga teacher, posted on Facebook, "I donated to a GoFundMe for a woman I used to know. Turns out none of it was real. She used her own family as props. This is why trust is so hard these days." That post got shared, commented on. Quietly, subtly, her last circle started to collapse. That's when she came crawling back. She showed up at Mom's house late at night. No makeup, no designer bag, just the baby in a carrier and a grocery bag with diapers and half a box of formula. Mom told me she looked smaller somehow, like whatever fight was in her had started to fade. She asked to come in, said she had nowhere to go, said she wasn't looking for help, just rest. Mom let her inside, let her sit, let her talk. She told her everything, that she knew I'd shut the fundraiser down, that she'd been cut off by her in-laws, that her husband had started pushing for full custody. She said she was scared of losing the baby, that she was finally ready to change. Then she made one mistake. She asked Mom to talk to me. Not to apologize, not to explain, to convince me to back off, to stop ruining things for her. And that's when Mom told her the truth. She said, "Barbara didn't ruin your life. You did that. She just stopped covering your tracks." I wasn't even there, but I could picture it perfectly. That stunned silence she always slipped into when someone told her the truth without flinching. That moment she realized she couldn't argue her way out of it. The next day, she sent a message to the family group chat. "I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm trying to fix them. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to do better. If anyone wants to see the baby, I'd be grateful. If not, I understand." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't self-pitying. It actually sounded like her. Most people didn't reply. A few did. Short messages. Jenny said she'd stop by with some baby clothes. Uncle Rob said he'd pray for her. Aunt Deb sent a thumbs-up emoji, which for her is basically a treaty. I stayed silent. Then came the email. It was long. She wrote about therapy, about the meetings she was going to, about the job she finally got at a local grocery store. She wrote about shame, about not recognizing herself. She said she didn't blame me anymore, that she understood now, that she wanted her son to have a future. Not just because he deserved it, but because he needed to see what accountability looked like. She said she hoped one day I'd come see him, that she'd save a seat at every birthday, that I'd always be welcome if I ever changed my mind. And you know what? It almost worked. But then I remembered what came after every apology. The next scheme, the next lie, the next mess I'd have to clean up. The family she pitted against me, the money she stole from Mom, the way she used my face to bait strangers online. So I didn't reply. I waited a week before opening her email again. Read it twice, sat with it for a while, then deleted it. No reply, no response. I wasn't angry anymore. That had burned out weeks ago. What I felt was something worse. That dull, steady certainty that I was done. But the rest of the family, they weren't there yet. Jenny went to visit her 2 days after the group chat message. She dropped off baby clothes and some groceries. Said the place looked clean. Said the baby was healthy. Said my sister seemed real, not performative, just tired, trying. A few days later, Aunt Deb stopped by with a box of old toys from her basement. Uncle Rob sent a small check tucked in a card that said, "For the baby, not you." My brother texted her something neutral. Even Mom invited her over for Sunday dinner. Just her and the baby. There was no dramatic reunion. No big welcome back. Just small, careful, reluctant steps. Like people circling a wild animal that might still bite. She didn't ask for money again. Didn't post anything online. The GoFundMe was dead. The Instagram went private. She got a real part-time job stocking shelves at a grocery store. Started taking the bus. Stopped pretending she was someone she wasn't. She texted me once more. Just one line. "Thank you for not giving up on me completely." I never responded. I didn't hate her, but I didn't trust her. And I didn't feel guilty about that. The holidays came. There was a quiet plan to get everyone together for Christmas Eve. Jenny organized it. A small dinner, no drama, no speeches. I wasn't gonna go. But Mom called me the night before and asked if I'd consider showing up just for the baby. I said I'd think about it. That morning, I got up, made coffee, and transferred $1,000 to my mom's account with a note. "For the baby's first Christmas. Use it how you want." Then I stayed home. I heard later that the dinner was quiet. No tension, just awkward smiles and safe conversations. She brought the baby. He wore a red sweater someone had donated. Apparently, he smiled the whole time. They all said she was calm, different, not cured, not fixed, but trying. They wanted me to know. Jenny called and said, "I think she's really working on herself." Maybe she was, but I still didn't go because even if she changed, I wasn't going back. I'd spent years cleaning up behind her, lying for her, covering for her. I watched her burn people down and smile while doing it. That kind of damage leaves marks. Even if she rebuilt her life perfectly, mine had scars from hers. She still sends updates sometimes. Photos of the baby. Quick notes. She stopped asking me for things, which is the only reason I don't block her entirely. I don't wish her harm. I just don't want her near my peace. And maybe that's the real ending. The family gave her one last chance. I didn't, and I don't think I ever will. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My sister said, "We don't want you at the wedding. It's a family thing." I accepted it and walked away. That night, I canceled the $5,000 photographer I'd booked, pulled my contribution from their registry, and shut down the joint card they'd been using for decor. By morning, she texted me 30 messages. "Why are the vendors canceling?" I just smiled and replied. It happened at a Sunday dinner that wasn't supposed to mean anything. Jessica was getting married in 3 weeks, and the whole dinner was just an excuse to finalize some last-minute logistics. I had a printout in my back pocket with the photographer's details and confirmation number, paid in full, my gift to her. I didn't tell her I had also upgraded their package to include a custom album. I thought it'd be a nice surprise. We were halfway through the meal when Jessica cleared her throat and said she had something to announce. Everyone quieted down. She looked at me, then at Mark, then at my parents. "We've decided," she said. "We don't want Bob at the wedding." It's a family affair. The words didn't hit all at once. It was like my brain buffered them first, then played them back in slow motion. I looked around the table, waiting for anyone to react. Dad scratched his beard. Mom stared down at her plate. Mark adjusted his sleeve. Nobody said a damn word. I thought maybe she meant something else, like maybe a joke or a misunderstanding. So I asked, "What?" Jessica didn't flinch. "It's just better this way." I stood up slowly. My chair scraped against the tile. Nobody stopped me. Nobody asked where I was going. My coat was still on the back of the chair. I left it there. I drove home with both hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead like I was holding the road together with my eyes. I wasn't sad, nor angry either. I felt something colder, like when you realize you've been walking around with your fly down all day and nobody bothered to tell you. Except this was worse because these were my people. When I got home, I sat down and made a list. Photographer. Cancelled. He was an old friend from college and I'd thrown him business over the years. One call and it was done, no fee, no questions. Registry. I logged into their page and quietly took back the espresso machine I bought them. The one with the milk frother, the pressure gauge, the custom engraving. They told everyone I was so generous. I guess generosity has a return policy. Card. That one stung a bit. It was my business card they were using for the florist, lighting, DJ, and probably half a dozen other things. I froze it. Then I reported it compromised. That shut everything down in under an hour. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with the lights off and just listened to the quiet. Every now and then, my phone would light up. First, a few texts from Jessica. Then more. Jessica. Why is the DJ saying the deposit didn't go through? Jessica. Did you take your gift back? Jessica. The florist is saying everything's canceled. Are you doing this? Jessica. Bob. What are you doing? Jessica. Are you serious? By 7 a.m., I had 30 unread messages. Maybe more. I opened them all, read them one by one, then type 2 words back. You sure? I didn't wait for a reply, and I thought that would be it. I thought I'd made my point and we'd go our separate ways. They'd have their wedding, and I'd be somewhere else that day drinking a beer and forgetting it ever happened. But I didn't know then that this wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. The morning after everything blew up, I expected calls. I expected my parents to call me furious or at least confused. I expected Jessica to keep texting, demanding explanations, maybe trying to smooth things over, but there was nothing. The silence stretched out like a wire pulled too tight. The kind that hums in your ears even when no one's talking. Monday passed with 0 contact. Tuesday, the same. I found myself checking my phone for missed calls even though I had no alerts. It was the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like a trap. On Wednesday, I cracked open the wedding planning spreadsheet. I don't know why, maybe just to confirm to myself how much I'd done. I went through line by line. Deposits I put down, people I called in favors from, time I carved out of my own work schedule just to help them meet deadlines. I wasn't trying to stew, but the more I read, the more that pressure came back. Then I saw it. A little note at the bottom of one of the tabs. Confirm RSVP count with mom and dad. It was dated 2 weeks ago. And next to it, under a highlighted cell, was a list of attendees. My name wasn't on it. So, this had been coming for a while. I sat back in my chair and just stared at the wall. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment thing. This was planned. I had been quietly erased. That night, I got a call from my dad. I let it go to voicemail. He didn't leave one. On Thursday, my cousin Tyler posted a joke about family drama on his Instagram story with a popcorn gif. Someone had clearly told him something. Probably half the family knew by now. I could picture the group chats, the subtle blame game, the sides being taken. Then Friday hit, and I got a text from Mark. This isn't how we wanted things to go. That was all he wrote. I didn't answer, but I kept rereading it. It sounded rehearsed, sanitized, like someone had helped him draft it to sound just remorseful enough without admitting anything. Like a corporate apology. No ownership, just discomfort. That night, Aunt Lynn called me. She doesn't call. She's the kind of aunt who writes long Facebook posts about her rescue cats, and sends you Christmas cards with glitter on them. But that night she called. I picked up. She asked how I was doing and said she was just thinking of me. Then she added that Jessica had been crying a lot, that this whole thing had been hard on everyone, and that maybe, just maybe, I could try to be the bigger person. The bigger person. Of course. I didn't argue. I told her I was fine, thanked her for calling, and hung up. But I wasn't fine. I was just exhausted. Not from the drama, but from realizing how long this had been brewing under the surface without me noticing. Somewhere between the photographer booking and the espresso machine, I had stopped being part of their inner circle. Saturday evening, I couldn't help myself. I drove by my parents' house. All the cars were there. Jessica's, Mark's, my parents', even my uncle's truck. They were having some kind of family meeting. I wasn't invited. I sat at the stop sign across the street for a minute before driving on. Later that night, I poured myself a drink, sat down, and opened the folder on my desktop labeled Jess and Mark. It was filled with wedding stuff. Contracts, designs I helped tweak, and a draft of a speech I was going to give at the reception. It had dumb jokes from when we were kids, a memory about the time she broke her wrist and I carried her 3 blocks home, and this line I'd written after too much bourbon one night. There's nothing stronger than blood, unless it's love that chooses to stay. I deleted the folder, not just moved it to trash. Gone. I was about to shove my laptop when a text came in. It was from Jessica. "Call me," she wrote. "Please." Then another, "It wasn't my idea." I stared at those words longer than I want to admit. My first instinct was to roll my eyes. Blame shifting, I thought. Easy out. But something about the way it was written stuck with me. It was short but not cold. Not rehearsed like Mark's. I called her. She didn't answer. I stared at my phone. For the first time in a week, I started to feel like I didn't know the full story. And that scared me more than anything. She didn't call back that night or the next morning. I figured she changed her mind or maybe someone had talked her out of it. Either way, I wasn't going to chase. I'd said what I had to say without really saying much at all. Sunday afternoon, I got an email. Subject line, "For what it's worth." No text in the body, just a single attachment. A voice memo timestamped from 3 days ago. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. It was a recording from a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Jessica's voice came through first, calm but tense. "He's not the problem." Then Mom. "Jess, we're trying to keep things from falling apart. Don't start this again. You don't get it. You never did." Dad cut in. "Let it go. We're past it." And then something I wasn't ready for. "Jessica. He doesn't even know it was me who told Rachel to come forward." The room went quiet. Even the recording seemed to hold its breath. Then Mom again, low and sharp. "That's done. We're not reopening that." "I already did," Jess said. "Because it was the right thing." I stopped the recording. I didn't understand all of it. Rachel, come forward with what? My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard that name in years. Rachel was my ex from way back 2016. We dated for almost a year, but things had fallen apart in this weird, quiet way. She ghosted, basically. We had one fight, then she stopped responding. I told myself she just wasn't ready for something serious. We hadn't spoken since. Now I sat there staring at the screen, heart racing, trying to piece together what Jessica was talking about. I opened Facebook and searched Rachel's name. Her profile was private, but her profile picture had changed. She looked the same, maybe a little older, a little more tired. I didn't sleep much that night. Monday morning, I called Jessica. This time, she picked up. I didn't even say hello. "Why did you say it wasn't your idea?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Because it wasn't. Mom and Dad asked me to. They said it would be less complicated if you weren't there." I didn't speak. "And because they were afraid you'd find out about..." "About what?" Another pause. "You remember Rachel?" Everything stopped. "Yeah," I said. "Why?" "She told me something back then. Something you did or said, I don't know. I think she was scared. But she said you crossed the line." I went cold. "What line?" Jessica exhaled. "She said you scared her. You said something in a fight. Something about control, about walking away without a trace. I started, but stopped. My mind flashed to that fight. A stupid, heated night in my apartment. We were yelling. I said something like, I could disappear and you'd never hear from me again. I remember slamming the door. I never thought it meant anything. She didn't answer my texts after that. I thought she just needed space. She thought you meant it, Jessica said. That you'd actually vanish. That you were capable of just shutting her out completely. It shook her. And I didn't tell you because she begged me not to. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know how to feel. I had carried this story in my head that Rachel ghosted, that I was the abandoned one, the quiet victim. Now that version started to crumble. So you told Mom and Dad? Years later, when I heard she was in therapy because of it, I felt like I had to say something. I sat there in silence. My chest felt tight, not from guilt yet, but from realizing how little I had questioned my own version of things. Jessica's voice softened. I didn't want to cut you out of the wedding, but when this all came back up, they thought it would keep the peace. So the punishment was about something I didn't even know I did. No, it was about something you forgot you did. I ended the call without saying goodbye. Then I sat in the dark for a long time. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about pride. It was about something else now. Something I hadn't expected, shame. For the rest of that day, I felt like I was underwater. Everything sounded muffled. My phone buzzed a few times, emails, work notifications, but I didn't care. I didn't even eat. I just sat there thinking about all the versions of the story I had told myself over the years. How I was the good guy, the steady one, the one who got blindsided and left behind. I never once stopped to ask if I had scared her. I never even thought about it. I remembered that night with Rachel so clearly now, in ways I hadn't before. I remembered the way she stood near the door like she wasn't sure she should leave or stay. The way her voice got quiet. Not because she was done talking, but because she was trying to shrink. And I remembered what I said. I could disappear right now and you'd never find me. You don't know how fast I could vanish from your life. I said it because I wanted her to feel what I was feeling. I wanted her to feel powerless. I didn't hit her. I didn't scream in her face. But I said something meant to cause damage, and it did. She didn't text back after that. She didn't call. I never got the chance to explain. And deep down, I think I was glad, because no follow-up meant no responsibility. I got to be the guy who got ghosted, the guy who was wronged. Now, I realized I had ghosted her emotionally long before she ever walked out of my life. I sat on that truth all night. By morning, I was still staring at the ceiling. I called Jessica again. She picked up immediately. I want to fix it, I said. Bob, I'm not asking to be in the wedding. I'm not asking for anything. I need to fix it. There was a long silence on the other end. I thought maybe she'd hung up. She's not in the city anymore, Jessica finally said. But I know how to reach her. Would she even talk to me? I don't know. There was another pause, but something in her voice shifted. You should write her, she said. Don't text. Don't call. Just write. So I did. That afternoon, I pulled out a yellow legal pad and started writing. I didn't apologize like I was trying to scrub it clean. I didn't use flowery words or excuses. I just told the truth. About how I saw myself back then. About how I said something cruel on purpose. About how I hid behind the story where I was the good guy. I told her I didn't need her to respond, that I understood if she never wanted to hear from me again. I only wanted to tell her she was right to walk away, that I see it now. I sealed the envelope, wrote her name on it, and gave it to Jessica. She promised to send it. The next day, I got a call from my mom. I want you to come over, she said. So I did. It was quiet when I arrived. No one yelled. No one accused. My dad nodded at me. Jessica hugged me. Even Mark said he was glad I came. We sat in the living room and no one brought up the wedding. Instead, we just talked. And it felt like for the first time in a long time, none of us were performing. We were just being. About a week after I handed Jessica the letter, she called again. Her voice was different this time. Still tired, but not brittle. like something inside her had finally stopped cracking. "I wanted you to hear it from me," she said. "We're postponing the wedding." I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure if it was an invitation to talk or a warning to stay quiet. She kept going. "Not because of what happened. Not entirely. It just stopped feeling like ours. Mom started controlling everything and Mark and I let her. And when the thing with you blew up, it was like we both realized we hadn't said yes to any of it. We just got swept up." "You okay with it?" I asked. "I am now." There was a pause. "We're doing it smaller next time," she added. "Just the people who matter, who show up when it counts." I didn't ask if I was one of them. I just said good and left it at that. A few days later, I was walking through a bookstore downtown when I got a text from Mark. Short and unexpected. "Coffee?" He picked a spot on 5th and Pine. Nothing fancy, just an old corner place with good drip and cracked leather booths. I got there 5 minutes late. He was already sitting, 2 mugs in front of him, one pushed to the other side of the table like he wasn't sure if I'd show. He stood up when I came in. We shook hands. For the first minute, we didn't talk. Just sipped our coffee and watched a couple argue quietly near the register. Then he said, "Look, I don't know what I expected when I started dating your sister, but I didn't think we'd end up here." "Yeah," I said. "Me either. I want to get this right," he said. "With her, with the family, and with you." I nodded. I didn't try to deflect or lighten the moment. I just let him talk. "She told me what you wrote to Rachel. She didn't give me the details, just that it was honest and that it mattered." I didn't look at him. "I don't know what happened between you two. I don't need to. But I think it takes a lot to admit something like that, especially after so long." He took another sip. "We're doing a new wedding next month. Small backyard thing. No DJ, no speeches. Just people who've earned the seat." Then he looked at me. "You in?" I sat there for a few seconds staring at the steam rising from my mug. Then I said, "Only if it's okay with her." "It is. I want to be there," I said. "Not as the guy who helped plan the first one. Not to prove anything. Just to be there the right way this time." He nodded. No back-patting. No teary hug. Just the quiet agreement between 2 guys trying to rebuild something they barely had time to form. When I left the cafe, I walked a little slower. The kind of pace you keep when you're not running from anything. I didn't know what the wedding would look like. I didn't know who would be there. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like the seat waiting for me wasn't just a favor. It was mine. The new wedding was nothing like the original. No ballroom, no matching table runners, number 20-page itineraries. Just the backyard of my parents' house. A string of warm lights stretched between the trees, and the smell of fresh-cut grass. There were maybe 20 people there, tops, a handful of close friends, a few extended relatives, and the family that still felt like family after everything. Jessica wore a plain white dress, barefoot again, her hair pinned back simply. Mark stood under the arbor with a calm I hadn't seen in him before. He looked like someone who had been through fire and had no interest in pretending anymore. I stayed in the back for most of it. Not hiding, just watching, taking it in. The way Jess grinned at something Mark whispered before they exchanged vows. The way our mom wiped a tear and pretended she wasn't. Even Dad looked lighter, like maybe he was just glad everything hadn't broken completely. After the ceremony, there was no seating chart, just folding tables and mismatched chairs. I ended up next to Mark's brother and my cousin Tyler, who couldn't stop talking about how much better this was than that overproduced Pinterest nightmare we almost had. Jessica came over about an hour in. She didn't say anything right away, just stood next to me while I picked at a plate of grilled chicken and salad. "I read the letter," she finally said. "I never told you that." I nodded. "You didn't have to." She shook her head. "I did. It mattered. We didn't talk about Rachel. We didn't talk about that first dinner or the 30 text messages or the wreckage I left behind. It felt like all of that belonged to another version of us. People who hadn't yet learned the difference between being right and doing right. Later, when the sun was down and the lights cast soft shadows over the lawn, Mark stood up and tapped his glass. People turned to look, expecting a toast, but he just raised his glass slightly and said, To new beginnings. Then he sat back down. It was enough. Jessica leaned across the table and said, "You want to say something?" I thought about it, about that original speech I'd written, the one I deleted without a second thought, about the jokes and the big sentimental line at the end. But I shook my head. "I already did." She smiled. Then she reached across the table and held my hand for just a second, long enough to say what didn't need to be spoken out loud. That night, when I got home, I sat in my car a minute before going inside. No music, no phone, just the quiet of a full-circle moment. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. But I still wanted to give something back. That's how I knew we were good again. Not perfect, but good. And that was enough. The update. 3 weeks after the wedding, life slid back into its regular shape. Work picked up again. The family text thread turned back into dog photos and sarcastic memes. Jessica and Mark went on a short honeymoon up north. I went back to being the guy who answers emails at 2 a.m. and forgets to defrost chicken. Then I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name and handwriting I hadn't seen in years. Rachel. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Part of me didn't want to. Part of me didn't feel like I had the right to. But I opened it anyway. The letter wasn't long. She said, "Thank you. Not for apologizing, but for not trying to fix it or explain it away." She said she never thought I'd actually remember what I said that night, let alone admit it. That she didn't hate me and never really had. She just couldn't carry it with her. Then she wrote something that hit me harder than anything else. She said, "That version of you scared me, but I don't think that's the whole of who you are. I hope you don't think so either." I sat there holding that letter for what felt like hours. Not because it absolved me, because it didn't, but because it reminded me that redemption isn't always about being forgiven. Sometimes it's just about being seen clearly and still being given space to grow. Later that night, I texted Jessica, "Want to do dinner sometime next week? My treat. And yeah, Mark can come too." She replied instantly, "Only if it's your lasagna." Fair enough. I closed my phone, stood up, and finally opened the freezer. The chicken was still frozen solid, but somehow I didn't mind. Now on to the next story. Story 8. "Photos are just for family," my mom said as she steered me out of frame and pointed me toward the fold-out chair by the hallway. I just agreed. Dinner passed. Speeches, too. Then the waiter came with the bill. $3,200. I just smiled and said, "I won't pay for strangers. Try whoever's in the picture. Photos are for family only." That's what my mother said, arm outstretched like she was shooing a dog off the porch. I'd been walking toward the group to get in the shot, but she just turned, pointed to a folding chair in the hallway, and kept smiling for the camera. So I sat down. No one looked twice. Not even my brother, not my sister, not the cousin. They were all pretending he was some kind of prodigy. I sat in that hallway chair next to a fake ficus and a coat rack full of jackets, listening to them laugh inside while someone took photos like it was the royal family's Christmas card. I had flown in from San Diego, 2 connections, red-eye flight, no sleep. I paid for the hotel, the rental car, and the overpriced dress shoes I bought last minute because the event was black tie optional, which really meant if you're not dressed up, you're not in the photos. The kicker? I wasn't even told it was for my cousin until I got there. My sister just said, "We're having a family dinner. It's important." The cousin in question, Chase, had completed some kind of online certification. 6 weeks of audio engineering at a place that spelled certificate wrong in the email header. But there they were, passing around a laminated copy like it was a Pulitzer. My uncle gave a speech about overcoming adversity, referring to Chase getting dumped and sleeping on a friend's couch for a month. My aunt wiped away tears like her son had cured cancer. Meanwhile, I hadn't been mentioned once. Not a word about the business I built. Nothing about the years I bailed out my brother's car loans or paid off mom's medical bill when her insurance lapsed. No acknowledgement, no toast, not even a nod. Just that one line, "Photos are for family only." Dinner was absurd. Courses I couldn't pronounce. Some of it was molecular gastronomy nonsense that looked like science projects. Champagne so dry it gave me a headache. The cousin had 3 plates and got drunk halfway through. He made a speech about how family is everything and how he owed it all to his people. Everyone clapped. I went to the bathroom just to breathe. Then the bill came. A waiter, polite, overly rehearsed, placed the leather folder gently in front of me. My mom smiled at me like we had an agreement. My brother made some joke about me taking care of it, like always. My aunt raised her glass. They were all looking at me, just assuming. I opened the folder. $3,200. They had ordered caviar, imported truffles, and bottles of wine I hadn't even tasted. I looked around the table. Laughter, pride, entitlement. No one even flinched. I closed the folder, handed it back to the waiter, and smiled. I said, "I'm not paying for strangers. Try the ones in the photo." For a few seconds, nothing moved. Forks froze. Conversations cut off mid-word. The waiter blinked like he wasn't sure if he'd heard me right. My mom's mouth opened, then shut. My brother stared. Chase tried to laugh, but coughed instead. Then came the backlash. My sister leaned across the table and hissed something about embarrassment. My aunt said I was ruining a moment that wasn't even about me. My mom stood up and demanded I explain myself. I didn't. I just walked out, got in my rental car, and drove off. I didn't even bother saying goodbye. By the time I got back to the hotel, my phone had 16 missed calls and 4 voicemails. 2 texts from my brother said I was done in the family. My sister accused me of emotional blackmail. My mother's message was just one long paragraph about shame and disappointment. That was the last dinner. That was the night I stopped playing along. They thought I was just being dramatic. They didn't know I was done being their safety net, their backup plan, their personal ATM. They thought it was a tantrum, but it wasn't. It was a warning, and it was already too late. The silence lasted 2 weeks. Then came the first blow. A forwarded email from my brother labeled FYI. It was about a delay on his mortgage payment. Apparently, the automatic withdrawal didn't go through. He hinted, without actually asking, that it would be great if someone could help out just this month. I deleted it. The next day, my sister called straight to voicemail. Then a message, "Hey, I know things got weird, but Mom's birthday is coming up. We're planning something small. We're splitting the costs evenly. I'll send the breakdown." I didn't respond. They didn't get it yet. Not really. They thought I was cooling off, playing hard to get. They'd seen me annoyed before, even distant, but I always came around. I always paid. I always showed up until now. A week later, my mom called. I let it ring. Then she sent a message. Not an apology, not even an acknowledgement, just a list of tasks. She needed help renewing her registration, filing something for her taxes, and checking in on a weird charge from her insurance. She signed it off with, "Love you. Thanks in advance." I didn't answer. 3 days later, I got a text from Chase. "Bro, is it true you're ghosting the whole family over dinner?" LOL. That's cold, man. That was the one that did it. Cold. I'd paid his rent for 2 months last year, bought him a laptop when he couldn't finish his online course, and now I was cold. So, I started pulling things back quietly. My mom's phone plan? I had been paying it for years. I took her off my account. My brother's car insurance? Cancelled. I had no legal obligation to keep it, and I made sure he had just enough time to figure it out before renewal. My sister's backup Dropbox folder, the one where she stored her writing projects? Deleted. She never once paid for her half. Each little thread I pulled made more noise than the last. My mom left a voicemail crying. My brother texted me some long message about loyalty and being a real man. My sister emailed me an essay-length guilt trip. But none of them said sorry. None of them asked what was really going on. They just wanted their services back. So I waited. I watched. And then I took the next step. My Uncle Darren, the only one I actually respected, called to ask if everything was all right. I told him the truth. All of it. The money, the dismissal, the hallway chair, the bill. He stayed quiet for a while. Then he just said, "Damn, you've been carrying them for years." Exactly. That week, I pulled the plug on Chase's new podcast hosting. He'd been using my credit card. He swore it was just for setup. I changed the password and shut it down. The next day, he posted some story about technical issues. They started to feel it. Not all at once, but in ripples. Little inconveniences that added up. And then one night, my mom finally called again. This time, she said, "We need to talk." I thought, maybe this was the moment. Maybe they'd finally see it. Maybe they'd realize what they'd been doing. But instead, she said, "Your behavior is hurting the family." No apology, no reflection, just blame. That was when I knew they weren't going to change. But I was. And the next part of the plan was already in motion. They always used the word family like it meant immunity. Like being related was supposed to cover every insult, every manipulation, every unspoken debt they piled on me for years. But I knew better now. I knew exactly what family meant to them. It meant obligation, control, free labor, and a wallet that didn't talk back. They didn't realize I'd been preparing for this break long before the dinner. Quietly, patiently, like someone packing bags before a storm. I had just never followed through until now. First, I dealt with the trust. My father set it up before he passed. Modest funds, just enough to make a difference if used right. He put me in charge, and I'd managed it like he asked. My siblings had no idea how it worked. They just waited for the quarterly deposits like it was Christmas. When I went through the statements, I saw that Chase had been having my mom direct her portion into his own account. He said he'd pay it back. Of course he did. He always said that. I met with the estate attorney and explained everything. Legally, I had the right to dissolve the trust and claim my share. So I did. I transferred my part into an account they couldn't touch and sent the official notice to the rest. The emails came flying in within hours. My brother tried calling during a meeting 5 times in a row. My sister left a voicemail crying. My mom sent a Facebook post tagging me with a caption about betrayal and grief, like I'd stolen something sacred. I didn't answer. I didn't care. Then came the duplex. A while back, I'd bought a small property in Oregon. Cheap, ugly, but full of potential. I fixed it up slowly over weekends and holidays. Turned it into something livable. Rented out the top unit and let my mom and sister stay in the bottom half for free when things got tough. That was 3 years ago. I paid for repairs. I covered utilities. I even sent grocery deliveries. They never said thank you. Not once. When the last inspection came around, I walked through the place and found wine stains on the floor, mold in the bathroom, and holes in the drywall. My sister said they'd been meaning to tell me about it. My mom said, "It's still better than it was when you bought it." I'd had enough. I called my lawyer and drafted a termination notice. They had 60 days to move out. No extension, no exceptions. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. My sister called screaming. I let it go to voicemail. My mom left one of those long, breathy messages that start calm and spiral into guilt trips. "You're punishing us for the past. You're choosing money over love. You're acting like a stranger." No, I was acting like someone who had finally woken up. They didn't even try to understand. Didn't ask why I was cutting ties. Didn't acknowledge the years of silent sacrifices. They acted like victims. Like they were the ones betrayed. Like I owed them another chance. 2 days after the letter, my brother posted on Facebook about family snakes and fake loyalty. My cousin liked the post. My aunt commented something about karma. None of them knew what was coming next because I wasn't done yet. I started pulling back all my support. The subscriptions, the online services, the auto payments they forgot I was covering, all gone. I sold the shared streaming accounts, canceled the backup drives, and closed the travel rewards account my brother used for his weekend trips with girlfriends he never introduced to us. Every convenience they had leaned on, every shortcut they took because they assumed I'd always be there, it disappeared. They panicked and still not one apology. They blamed me, said I was being dramatic, that I was overreacting, that family fights are normal, that I was just tired and needed time. They didn't understand that this wasn't a tantrum. It was closure. And in 2 months, when the locks changed on that duplex and they were standing on the sidewalk holding boxes they didn't pay for, maybe they'd finally get it. Or maybe they'd never get it. Either way, I was done. They moved out 3 days before the deadline. Not out of respect. They were just scared of legal trouble. My mom left a note in the kitchen. "You're not who I raised." I didn't even keep it, just tossed it with the rest of the junk they left behind. Plates with hairline cracks, stained sofa cushions, and a blender that smelled like burnt plastic. I cleaned the place myself. I wanted to see it for what it was without them in it. The silence was different now. It wasn't lonely. It was clear. For the first time in years, I didn't owe anyone anything. I didn't hear from them for a while after that. A few scattered texts. One from my sister asking if I was seeing a therapist. One from my brother saying I was heading toward total isolation. I blocked both. 3 months later, I hit a rough patch. It wasn't financial. It was a legal issue. An old business partner came after me with a lawsuit over a patent design he claimed I had stolen. Completely false, but he was loud about it. Filed in a public court. Made some noise online. The news reached the family faster than it reached me. My brother posted a not-so-subtle status. "What goes around comes around." My cousin commented with a laughing emoji. My aunt sent me a text saying, "You're learning now, aren't you?" They were giddy, actually thrilled that I was struggling. For a minute, I thought maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe they were just trying to defend themselves. But that illusion didn't last. Not when my mom replied to the news by texting, "Karma always finds its way. Maybe next time you'll think before hurting your blood." That hit differently. Even then, I didn't ask them for help. I hired a better attorney, quiet, efficient, expensive. We countersued, filed documentation, and handled everything cleanly. No media, no noise. And then I won. The court ruled in my favor and awarded damages. I came out of it not just whole, but wealthier. My attorney set up a trust for my future ventures. A tech company I'd been incubating got a fresh injection of capital. Within 5 weeks, I landed a government contract. My financials tripled. The week the case closed, I got an email from my mom. Subject line, "We miss you. Can we talk?" Then a follow-up from my sister trying to joke. "Guess we overreacted. LOL. We're dramatic sometimes. Let's reset." My brother sent a photo of the 3 of them smiling in a diner booth. Caption, "Still got a seat for you." I didn't reply. Instead, I sent one final notice to the family group chat. The one they assumed I'd forgotten was still active. "House on Jefferson Lane is now officially under renovation. All keys have been changed. Any mail sent there will be returned. There are no more favors. No more safety nets. No more second chances. I've moved on. You should too." They knew what that meant. The Jefferson Lane house was my first home purchase. Technically, it was still the family house where birthdays happened, where we watched VHS tapes on weekends, where my dad's tools were still locked in the shed. My mom lived there once. My brother moved in after college. My sister used the guest room when her marriage ended. But I owned it. They cried about it being symbolic, about me erasing history, about being heartless. What they didn't say, not once, was sorry. Not for the chair in the hallway. Not for the bill they expected me to cover. Not for cheering when I stumbled. Not for turning on me the second I stopped feeding the machine. They never said sorry. And now they never will. Because this is what happens when you confuse someone's silence for weakness, when you mistake patience for permission. They taught me that without meaning to, and I learned. I hadn't planned to ever see them again. But things don't always go according to plan. It was late fall when I drove past the old community center near my mom's church, the one where we used to host family potlucks. There was a small event going on. Folding tables, cheap lights, people in jackets standing around styrofoam cups. I was on my way to a meeting, but something made me pull over, and that's when I saw her. My aunt, the one who'd laughed under my brother's post about karma. She was handing out flyers. Her face looked different, tired. I didn't approach her. I just sat in the car for a minute and watched. Then I left, but it stuck in my mind. Not because I felt guilt. I didn't. But it reminded me of how many years I'd poured into people who had always taken without blinking. People who'd never lifted a finger when things got hard for me, but lined up when I was winning. That week, my lawyer sent me another request from my mom. They wanted to contest my control over the Jefferson Lane house. They claimed it was bought for the family, even though it had always been in my name. My dad left the money to me directly. They had no claim. Still, they tried. It didn't work. We shut it down in less than 72 hours. But it was the principle that got to me. After everything, they were still looking for a way back in. Not to fix things, not to apologize, just to reclaim comfort. The next blow came not from them, but from someone I didn't expect. Uncle Darren, the only one who had my back through the chaos. He showed up one evening at my office. No warning, just walked in and asked to talk. I let him. He didn't lecture me. He didn't beg. He just told me the truth. They were struggling, financially, emotionally, publicly. The lawsuit I had won got some quiet coverage in business circles. People started asking questions about them. The support system they relied on was cracking. "They're not going to ask you for help," he said. "Too proud, too bitter. But they need it." I asked him why he was telling me. "Because you're not them, and I hope you never become them." Then he left. I thought about it for a while, a few days. I even walked past the Jefferson Lane house one night. Lights off, grass overgrown. For a second, I imagined them in there again, pretending nothing happened, pretending we were one happy, twisted family. And then I remembered the folding chair in the hallway, the waiter with the bill, my mother's face when I said I wouldn't pay. They didn't need help. They needed accountability. They needed to know that actions had consequences, even inside families, especially inside families. So I made one last move. I met with my financial advisor and set up a locked trust for emergency use only for any of them. But it wasn't a gift. Came with conditions, not just legally but personally. If they wanted access, they had to meet with me face to face. All of them. No lawyers, no mediators, no emails. A week passed, then two. Nothing. They couldn't do it. Couldn't swallow it. Couldn't show up, not if it meant facing what they'd done. So the trust sat there untouched, and I let it. Because even after everything, I gave them one final choice, and they made it. The last time they came to my house, they arrived like they thought they were the ones offering forgiveness. It was early December, just after the first snow. I was home alone, nursing a bourbon and looking over some paperwork for a property sale, when I got the message, "We're outside." No name, just that. Then another, "We came to talk. Please." I walked to the window and there they were. My mother in that thick coat she never zipped up properly. My brother pretending to look calm. My sister holding something in her arms. Maybe a box. Maybe some sad symbol of reconciliation. For a second, I thought about not answering, just letting them stand there in the cold like I had in the hallway that night. But I opened the door. They stepped in like they were still part of this place, like I was just having a bad mood, and they were here to fix it with some warm words and nostalgic references. My mom looked around like she was trying to remember where the family photos used to hang. My sister handed me the box. Old photo albums, mostly pictures of us when we were kids. Birthday cards I'd written to them. A note from my dad. Folded so many times it had creases like a road map. I set it aside without a word. They sat down. I didn't offer drinks. I didn't make small talk. I waited for them to say what they came to say. It took them 10 minutes to even begin. My brother started. He said they'd been thinking, that they realized things got out of hand, that everyone made mistakes, that this, and he gestured around the room like it was a battlefield, had gone on too long. My sister added something about family always finding its way back. She even teared up. My mom said she didn't want to die without her children speaking to each other. That I was still her son. Still, not once did they say what they needed to. Not once did any of them take real ownership. Not once did they say, "We used you. We humiliated you. We tried to punish you when you wouldn't keep paying for everything." Everything they said was a script, apology-shaped but hollow. When they finished, my brother asked, "So what now? We go back to normal?" I stood up, went to the drawer and came back with 3 envelopes. They each took one. My sister opened hers first. Her hands started shaking halfway through. My mom refused to open it. My brother just stared at the page, silent. Inside was a letter, simple and clear. Told them this was the end. That I was done. That they were no longer welcome in my life, my home, my future. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally did, because I cared enough about myself to walk away. It said I'd sold the Jefferson Lane house, our so-called family home, and put the money into a private foundation in my father's name. One that helped students with no support, no networks, no safety nets. Kids like I used to be. I told them they could keep the past, the memories, the photos, the old stories, but they had no place in my present, and they'd never be part of what came next. My mom cried quiet, defeated tears. My sister tried to speak but couldn't. My brother said nothing at all. They left without asking for another chance. Maybe they knew it wouldn't come. The next spring, I finalized the sale. The new owners gutted the place, remodeled it, and turned the garden into a deck. It didn't look like our house anymore, and that was the point. Uncle Darren kept in touch. A few distant cousins reached out cautiously. I welcomed the ones who came without drama or denial, the ones who never pretended I owed them anything. Life moved on, better, fuller, simpler. I invested. I traveled. I built things again. Not just businesses, but real friendships, real peace. And every now and then, someone would ask if I had siblings or what my parents were like. I'd say the truth. We're not close anymore. And that was enough. But sometimes when it's late and quiet, I think about that hallway, that folding chair, the laughter from the dining room just out of reach. And I remind myself that I never sat back down. I stood up, and I walked away. And it saved my life. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.